take a roll call. Wyatt Robinson. Aaron Hunt. Here. Justin Yanosik. Here. Chris Baker. Here. John Kent. Here. Aaron Kenny is absent. Okay, so agenda item number 1, public comment. Have anyone on?
No one else is asked to join the meeting.
Yeah.
So no.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item 2. Please conduct interviews for owner's project manager for the fire station project. So in roughly 15 minutes, we'll have our first, 10 minutes, we'll have our first prospective OPM at CHA. They'll be here from roughly 6:30 to 7:30. I talked to Blythe when we got in. I'll make kind of a brief introduction. Maybe everybody can introduce themselves. I'll kind of give a little background on how we got to this point, and then we'll open it up to the OPM. I think we're giving them, what, 20 minutes or so to talk?
20 minutes-ish.
Yeah, 20 minutes-ish. And then we'll try and go through our 8 or 9 questions. I would say, I think, if we're going through these, if you've realized that your question's kind of been answered already, you can certainly feel free to ask something different. I don't know if, I was thinking after the meeting, we would possibly go through any, I don't have the list of who was assigned CHA and Pomeroy. CHA and Pomeroy. If you guys have had a chance to talk to any of the references, and maybe we can kind of help them out a little bit. And then if we have a chance, we can start to fill out the rating sheet, though that we're not really needed to do that until the end of next meeting.
Yeah, don't need to do it tonight. I just wanted everyone to have it, and we built in 15 minutes between the 2 interviews, so either for them to take their stuff down and depart and new ones to start, or us to chat about it, and we can discuss at the end of the night if you want to about these 2, or we can wait till Wednesday.
All right, so I think we'll just move on to the next agenda item. Please consider approval of the minutes. Chris, assume you've had a chance to review them?
Yes, yeah. Make a motion to approve the minutes from the June 2nd meeting.
Second? Yeah, June 2nd. Did anybody have any comments on the minutes? All right, can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes.
At some point, I may try and find a clerk to take over some of that work, but for now, it's not a heavy lift.
Okay.
So, do you want to let them
I
come in
think
and
we can
start to
probably
get?
let them in. We can just get started maybe a little early.
Sure, never a bad thing.
All right.
Blake Robinson. Right, nice to meet you. Joe. So we have a table set up and Diane fixed correctly, 3 chairs.
We actually have another person joining us to the ladies' room.
Okay, would you like another table or?
No, we can stand up and we talk. Does that work for you guys?
That works, however,
Okay.
this is your show.
Sure.
Right, so if you plug, there's a
HDMI there.
HDMI there, there's the information about the Wi-Fi if you need it, it's right here.
Okay, well, good. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
And so give yourselves a minute to get set up and to get you
Okay,
another
great.
chair.
Thanks.
I'll do it.
This is always the first test to make sure we understand technology.
And they follow directions.
Yes, that's right.
And there was the technology.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is everyone okay with us not wearing masks? Is that okay?
As long as you're vaccinated.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
We have meeting rooms at town hall, but this room offered the most opportunity to spread out. And that's not that easy.
No, not at all. Was this space going for 60 people?
It has assembly, so I'm not sure how many this. So this is Norfolk's building, but the state 911 actually paid for the outfit of this room. So I don't remember the capacity, but it does fall under assembly. I think it's what I want to say. Was it 100? It could
Up to, right?
up to.
We work with Brian and Kari did the police station in Chicago and stuff.
Brian Mills?
Yeah.
Okay.
BC, we're down in Onset. That must have been a fun project working with them initially, huh? The challenges.
There are challenges, but challenges all around. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, and by the way, as I'm setting up, thank you for inviting us. We're really excited to be here tonight. You'll see tonight that I brought really a crack team of fire stations and public safety buildings. You'll hear a lot of the experience. I'm going to have the group introduce themselves, but the nice thing about the OPM services in Massachusetts and generally what we bring to the table is over 30 years of experience in building public buildings. And what's nice about that is we don't bring 30-year-old experience. We bring experience as of work we're doing even today. And so we're able to see what's worked in the past, what hasn't worked with the past, the kind of personalities. And it comes down to the end of the day is building the right team. And that's the team in front of you, building the team with the designer, building the team with the contractor, and then really having the team so committed that the project turns out a success for everyone. And we all know there's challenges when you try to go from what's the right size for the town, what's the right architectural design, where do we want to spend money, where we don't want to spend money, and what does the town generally want? Because as we all know, we have to go to vote for this, and so it's a long process. It's a long relationship, like I should say, and it's really important that everyone's dedicated, committed to see it from beginning to end. And so we don't go after every single opportunity that's out there in the marketplace. What's important to us is that it's a community that we understand what they're trying to achieve and that we have the profit team that's ready. And so the timing now is right for us. This group will be coming off a project. And for those that have done it, maybe you haven't in the past, these projects kind of have a long life cycle. They start with getting the right designer, understanding the program, having a discussion with the chief, understanding operational needs, understanding training needs. And you're going to hear my team talk about that and their expertise on that. And then you have to get the right contractor. And getting the right contractor, it's public bid. So some people say, how do you get the right contractor? Well, you can imagine we do a lot of public projects, and a lot of companies that want to build public projects will ask us what's coming up, what's happening. And we want to make sure we partner correctly, right? And so, yeah, many companies can come bid on it, but we want to make sure the companies that we know that are right for the town of Norfolk or right for that project are the ones that are going to be interested. And so we talk to them, not just when the plans are done, but we give them insight and say, we're probably 8 months away, we're probably 6 months away, so they can start assembling their 18 to be available. So there's a lot of communication you'll hear about tonight that happens, not just with us in the town, but with the committee and the chief and people in operations, but there's a lot of discussion that happens in the design community when we try to find the proper architect, or there's a lot of discussion that happens when we try to find the right construction manager. So based on your instructions, we'll do a 20-minute presentation. If you want to stop it, if we're using words that, we do this every day, right? This is our profession. This is what we take pride in. This is what we went to school for, and this is what we love to do. But sometimes we use words and phrases that maybe you might not understand, and just raise your hand and stop and say, I don't understand what you mean by schematic design followed by, feasibility or whatever the case may be. And we'll stop and we'll talk about it.
So, Sean, if you get going, are you going to start? So let's start with having the chair of the committee, Kevin Champagne, introduce and kick us off.
Sure.
I was going to give a little background, and we can kind of maybe go around and we can introduce ourselves, you introduce yourselves, and then you can
Sounds great.
take off.
Thank you.
So Kevin Champagne, I'm the chair of the Fire Station Building Committee, structural engineer by trade. We kind of formed as a committee 3 or 4 months ago to obviously renovate or replace the fire station. To give you a little bit of background, originally, probably 5 or 6 years ago, this was bid as a combined project. That the facility was originally a public safety facility, combined police and fire. The desire was to move the police department to the building we're in today, and then renovate the fire station as the second half of the project. The police station project ran into some complications. Long story short, there wasn't enough funds left over to complete the fire station project. There's still some money available, enough to get us certainly through design phase, but not enough through construction. So to kind of bring us around to where we are today, we want to try and use those funds as best we can to make the best decision path forward, renovate, rebuild, some combination thereof. So that the critical first step in that process is really getting the right OPM on board. I don't know if there's anything anybody else wants to add. Otherwise, we can go around and introduce yourselves.
Aaron Hunt, architect by trade. I'm Justin Yasek, I'm a firefighter.
Chris Baker, geotechnical engineer.
John Kent, energy project manager for the state.
Blythe Robinson, town administrator.
Matt Appner, facilities director, and our fire chief is missing today with a family emergency. So,
Great. So let me introduce us. My name is, I don't know if it's easier to sit or stand. Any preference with your group? Maybe we'll just sit then. So once again, my name is Sean Sweeney. I run the OPM group for CHA. I'm a civil engineer by trade. I've been building for almost 35 years now. I also happen to be a volunteer firefighter. So, we love this kind of work, and we love not only the public work, but especially you'll see our love of the fire station. So that hopefully that will come through. Amanda?
Thanks, Sean. So thank you all for having us here tonight. It's really nice to be in person with people and not on a screen. So this is just so exciting. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I am a project manager with CHA. I would be the project manager for this project. I have 20 plus years of experience in the design and construction field. I'm a registered architect in Massachusetts. So I bring sort of a unique perspective to the world of OPM in that respect. And as Sean mentioned, we have our colleagues, Alyssa and Joe, with us tonight. We work really, the three of us have worked on multiple projects together, some of those being fire stations. So we really have the experience, not just individually, but as a team. So with that said, I'll pass it over to Alyssa.
Yes. Hi, Alyssa Shatani. I'll be your assistant project manager along with Amanda, who's your day-to-day contacts. I have a background in management engineering and civil engineering from WPI. And before this, I worked for a construction management firm where I had a lot of field experience. So now I'm working for CHA and I specialize in public safety projects.
Thank you, Alyssa. I'm Joe Sullivan. I've been with CHA and Daedalus was purchased by CHA a little over 2.5 years ago. I was with Daedalus for 21 years. I specialize and my expertise is fire stations and police stations. I've been doing this for over 30 years. I went to Northeastern University for accounting. I hated sitting behind a desk, so I got into electrical engineering and mechanical engineering, got my background in that, and I ended up going out into the construction field. One of the things, I live in Carver, Massachusetts, which is fairly local. I know the area really well. I've done a lot of stations within the area. And my goal and my expertise here is going to show you through the discussion as we move forward through our presentation, what we know, how we do it, and what we're really good at. And I'll leave it to Sean.
Great. So one of the things that we always like to do, and I know we're the first group in front of you folks talking about OPM services, we like just to talk briefly about what an OPM does, and then we really want to differentiate for the last 30 years how we approach it as a company. Amanda?
So we really take pride in our role as an OPM, and we add value to your project every step along the way. And we do that through our multiple years of experience and diverse backgrounds. We really come from it from different perspectives, and the team comes together and shares those perspectives. We're really subject matter experts in this field, and not just the field of construction or public construction, but specifically fire station construction. So that's something that we'll bring to this project and to the town of Norfolk. We have a great resource of internal staff members that we really tap into on a daily basis. Those members consist of internal cost estimators. We have professional engineers on our team. We have code compliance experts, and we have commissioning agents. And these are all internal CHA staff members that we see on a daily basis. So we tap into those resources, and that's really an advantage for us and for the communities and towns like you that we work with, because we're able to just get that information, basically just snap of the finger. We don't have to call a consultant, wait for them to return our call. We're able to really just make those connections with our colleagues, our internal colleagues. So that's really a great value that we bring to the communities. So Alyssa's going to talk a little more about our sort of day-to-day nuts and bolts of what we do as OPMs.
Right. Thanks, Amanda. So our job is really to help you manage the designer during the design phase. So with that, we will make sure that all the programming needs really fit what this project is intended to do, that every square foot that you're building has a purpose. We'll make sure that on a day-to-day basis, we're communicating and we're providing you timely updates, whether it be managing the budget and managing every dollar that we spend on this project. During construction, when we get like look-ahead schedules, we'll make sure that we're staying on schedule. We'll compare it to the master schedule, just to ensure that we're not falling behind. If there was an unforeseen circumstance like COVID, we'll make sure that we
Just something small.
just like COVID, we'll provide you a recovery schedule. We'll work closely with the contractor to make sure we're making up that time and sequencing our critical path schedules. We are MCPPO certified, so we understand the public bidding laws of Massachusetts. We know how to put your advertisement in the central register, and we know how to do a legal ad. We'll help you with the e-bidding process. We'll review all of the contractors' files and their GCAM files, their financial files, to make sure that they're qualified to do the work. And so we want to be there with you guys every step of the way and make sure that you understand what's going on. And if there's ever an issue, we'll be there to mitigate and help you out.
Great. Thanks, Alyssa. Joe, so you have a little bit of experience with fire safety, right?
So thank you, Sean. Kevin made a great point in the very beginning, and part of that discussion is that making the right choice for the OPM for your project. And we're sitting in front of you because we feel we're that best choice. And the reason being is that fire stations are different than police stations. There's a vast differential between the two. You're both first responders, but there's a dynamic program need that fire departments have that other departments don't have. Separation of your apparatus, decon room. I mean, having that, area where the guys can come in after a tough fight with a fire and be able to get their gear off, clean up, and go into an area where they can feel, comfortable and safe as they move into. Looking at, your drawings, the pictures that were taken over the resource, it was clearly articulated that your gear is located in the apparatus, which today's standards is like, you just don't do that anymore. Keeping your ambulances, like I've done enough stations where we know that 65 degrees is the minimum temperature you want ambulances at any given time. We've had situations where, the heat sources within the apparatus space fall below that. And the engineers didn't design a recovery plan. When the doors fly open and you have to go out and service whatever calls you're doing, as you come back, it took forever for radiant heat just to recover that type of heat. So we know that, a supplemented heat source is going to be required under those days that temperatures drop below then. We know the differential that, your living quarters needs to have a separation from anything else. And those requirements, if central dispatch is necessary and you have a location where the calls come back into you, we know the differential at how those spaces should be set up with the not only the public coming into them, but the separation from where the firefighters meet those requirements. The apparatus bays, the mechanical equipment, we know that, your compressors and your air-filled tubes need to be a certain spot. And we also know that, the compressors shouldn't be too close to the living spaces. So when they kick on, it's echoing and you can't even have a conversation within those meeting spaces. One of the things that, stations need are your training spaces. You can have a similar space of this nature and utilize it a number of different ways. I've seen fire stations where, we try to build it for 50 years. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. And we make sure that, the design is not building a portfolio. We're making sure we're meeting the programs as my team alluded to. One of the other items that we try to make sure that happens is that we listen to the fire department and the building committee to ensure that everything that they're doing gets captured. And how we do that is that after the architect is on board, I make sure both Amanda, Alyssa, and I try to attend every meeting. And by doing so, we make sure the architect takes minutes, and those minutes is distributed back to the committee and to the fire department so that, not a skip is missed on that. So if the fire department said, hey, listen, we need a storage room within the apparatus just on the adjacent side to keep the equipment and drugs necessary to refurbish the ambulances within a certain distance. And we make sure that gets incorporated into the design. One of the things that we move forward with, and they alluded to, and it's such a positive thing that CHA has, is that internal component to be able to, push back and go over this information with the engineers and code compliant officers that we have, because designers are thinking big picture. They've drawn a lot of bubbles, making sure that everything works with each other. But what ends up happening is that you get a building that doesn't necessarily meet your thoughts of your program needs as you move forward. So we want to make sure that everything that is within your building meets every requirement that you need in that building. So that being said, I've done at least 9 or 10 fire stations. And those fire stations are extremely important to make sure that we hit all of your program needs. Thank you, Sean.
Great. Joe, you alluded to a couple of things there. Maybe you can expound on. One is, with Norfolk, there'll be an opportunity where we have to maintain full operations and design, and the conflict generally with trying to meet project schedule and trying to accommodate. Can you talk about past projects?
Absolutely. Town of Oak Bluffs, we ended up doing an occupied building. You're currently housing your EMS in a trailer, and Oak Bluffs had that same situation occur. We ended up doing a occupied rental, and we know the difference that what it takes to do those buildings. So what we ended up doing is that we strategically and methodically through the schedule was able to build the apparatus and some of the meeting spaces while we kept the occupancy of that EMS in place. In doing so, we had the insight and the thought process to be able to utilize some of the money that we spent to update the DPW within that building. And what we did is we housed some of the fire trucks and some of the less used vehicles in those spaces. By upgrading that facility, the fire department utilized it as their storage area. It gave us the capacity to knock down part of the fire station, build a new apparatus bay, and still be able to keep the functions because they were within a mile. That foresight, because there wasn't much space on the island to go ahead and get a temporary facility of that nature. So we had the insight that we took the town's dollars, we spent it and upgraded some of the overhead doors and some of the lighting and some of the spaces within the DPW. utilized it as a temporary housing for the fire department equipment. When the apparatus bays were done, we moved everything into the new fire station, and the DPW got a better building, and the dollars didn't go anywhere. It wasn't like we had to rent a Morton building to house these buildings in a temporary measure. That's the out of the box thinking that we do all the time. And part of, the EMS, it's a challenge because, and I don't know how your department is because I haven't had the chance to really evolve with the chief, but a lot of times there's a lot of firefighters have the EMS background and they interact depending on the coverages that you have there. And we understood like some of the challenges, like, housing them 24 hours, making sure that they have the separation after a tragic call to be able to decompress within a space and go to a space all by themselves to sit within that location. We sat, I understand how the town's dollars are spent, and I don't like spending any more money than we have to. So we look at, and Alyssa alluded to it, we look at every aspect of that construction. We may even pre-qualify your file subs and general contractors for that simple reason that we want to get the bottom feeders off of the project and get a good solid contractor that's built a fire station in the past and knows what you want. And we manage that process all the way through that. You're at that threshold where, pre-qualifying isn't necessarily necessary, but I think it's important for the town of Norfolk to do that. And by pre-qualifying those file subcontractors and general contractors, you're going to see who's really, warranted to be able to build the fire station on your behalf. We've done a lot of out of the box thinking. I mean, the town of Carver, we did a Carver fire station down there, and they wanted incorporating training facility within that building. By doing a couple of quick changes to the dynamics of the building, we're able to put a tower in place. We put a manhole cover that you could do rappelling from. I was able to secure a burn building for the town of Carver, and we did that as a pre-modular construction, and we were able to put an actual burn building on the backside with 6 to 7 different props on that. And by doing that, we sequenced where they wanted to buy the burn building from. We knew that the person wasn't DCAM certified, so we were able to team up with a contractor that is DCAM certified at Mass and partner them as a joint venture, and they were able to build a building for the district under their budgeted cost. So we're always thinking through the procurement process how we can better each town that we work for. So
that's great, Joe. Thanks. Listen, you wanted to add just a little bit on like FF&E and the other parts that like maybe not operational per se from a firefighting standpoint, but are definitely from a department standpoint.
Right. So we'll be there to manage the procurement of your furniture, fixtures, and equipment as well. And that will be going out, building the design to meet what you need for equipment, making sure that we get competitive pricing. We list it on combis to make sure that we get a state bid list pricing that's fair to the community. And we'll go ahead and make sure that we coordinate where the furniture is going to go with all the electrical for the training room. If you need floor boxes, making sure that desks aren't up against electrical, because you're spending the money for this infrastructure and you want to make sure that it's going to meet your needs. So we also know what the communications of a public safety building are. We'll coordinate that scope. We'll make sure that we meet with all those vendors to ensure that nothing is missed and that they have time to get into the communications room, secure their rack, make sure that all the equipment is needed for your operations, emergency operations.
Great. No, thank you. And then lastly, and I think Joe alluded this as far as finding solutions, but the real thing that keeps us up at night and probably keeps you up at night too, or will, if it hasn't yet, is project risk. And there's always risk in any project. If any of you even did an addition on your house, you know what project risks are. And so, we really try to think of project risks into kind of 3 buckets. There's driving the right design. And you heard us talk a little bit about making sure that nothing's lost in the translation. And I know it. Aaron, you're an architect as well, and you know the difficulty because sometimes people aren't good at expressing what they are looking for. Like they just, so I know when it's right. And you're like, well, could you tell me now what it's right? And they're like, no, design it 5 times and then I'll tell you which one is right. And so part of that is managing that process. And we're going to talk, you're going to talk briefly, Amanda, about the risk on that. And then we're going to talk about procurement risk. And Alyssa talked about that, about buying the right packages, understanding what you're purchasing, putting the bid package in a way that doesn't come back as a change order to the town and give more financial risk. And then Joe's going to talk about the importance of, and he talked a little bit about the importance of getting the right contractors, the right subcontractors, but he's also going to talk about risk of an active construction site while you're trying to do EMS and fire operations. So Amanda?
So as Sean said, there's risks in every design and construction project, and being an architect myself and having that background, I kind of look at it through a little bit of a different lens than maybe some other OPMs do, where when you stop and think about a construction project, you think about the construction risks as far as budget, schedule, and quality. And the way that I look at those things are they can really be managed early on in the design and not wait until they get to construction, where now they are a active risk in something happening. So we really push the architects to create a really tight set of drawings and documents. And that is going to eliminate a good amount of risks. If the drawings are not complete, if the specifications are not complete, and I'm using complete a little loosely, but really a really tight, well thought, well planned set of construction documents are going to create the foundation for a really good construction project. And that's how I look at it, in that phase and bring that to the project and kind of push the architect along, because I can look at a set of drawings and know if there's holes. So, that's one unique thing that our team brings to our communities and to our projects.
Sean, I just wanted to add one other aspect to it, and Amanda hit it spot on. One of the last things that we do through periodic portions of the design, especially through the architect, is cost estimates. We physically cost estimate at conceptual schematic where, if you're at that point, we would probably review whatever drawings or documents you have together and put a cost associated, because that's your baseline. That's at the end of the day, your budget is your budget. And our baseline is to make sure that we stay within those means. And those cost estimates get done periodically. We do them at 60% design development, and then we do them typically at 90% before they go out to bid. And the reason why we do that is it's a threshold, because if the designer is over designing something, we can say, hey, listen, there's a different type of material that you can use, still get the same and meet the same program needs, but maybe cut some of the costs associated with what you're proposing. That all gets, collaborated with the committee. You know what I mean? We wouldn't suggest something and just say, we don't care what they have to say, because we're your right arm. As your OPM, we're an extension of your right arm, but we're also going to look out at your best interest. So those cost estimates give us a great tool, and it's all in-house. At any given time, if we feel, a product or like vinyl VCT over epoxy floors, or there's a variation and you wanted to know the cost, it's a phone call that I can make and say, give me the square footage cost of what today's costs are, so that I can tell the committee exactly what direction or what aspect we should be looking at a little closer. And I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure that.
A little bit about procurement risk.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the pre-qualification, but any project that's over 10 million is required to go through pre-qualification. And so we'll reach out to general contractors and subcontractors that we've worked with in the past. We'll let them know that the project is coming out to be bid on, but also for them to submit their package. So we'll review all the way down from what projects have they worked on, what revenue do they have coming in, what was their safety scores, are they working with WBE, NBE companies, are they meeting those percentages? We'll make sure that they're a good contractor that can bid on the project. And then once we are awarding them down to construction, we have somebody on site that's making sure this construction is going right. We're making sure that they're coordinating with the department during an occupied space, even down to the FF&E that I talked about earlier, and making sure that we buy that out for a good price. I have an example in one of my past projects where I was reviewing plans and found a small electrical note that said we had power, like a 240 volt power requirement for a central vacuum system. It was nowhere to be found in the drawings, nowhere in the spec. I immediately called the architect and said, are we supposed to have this central vacuum system? He said, yep, I missed it. The next day I had the owner of a local vendor come out, walk the building, show us where we might need conduit run and walls above the ceiling. And we were maybe 2 weeks away from closing up the walls. Once you close those up, you're never reopening them. So you want to make sure stuff like that gets caught, so that conduit is put in the walls before you're boarding. And lo and behold, that contractor was on site the very next week, putting in all the conduit, running the ports, and we closed up walls. It didn't affect our schedule. And our chief was happy that we caught that. And now they have their central vacuum system. But it's little things like that we pay attention to detail. And we make sure that we're letting you know that these things are happening as well. We're providing you a solution before we come to you with a problem.
All right, Joe, I'm going to ask you a tough question on this one for construction risk. So can you talk about the importance of the communication, the team building that happens with the vendors, with the construction manager, and with our team, and why it's important?
Sure. Thanks, Sean. There's a number of different aspects of what we try to do with it. It all comes down to communication and relations. There's not a time that I don't know every, foreman of every subcontractor that's on that site, because there'll be at times that, they may not are not performing a specific task on there that we think that needs to be done. We're able to have that communication, as Alyssa alluded to, having the ability to work with that individual and say, listen, the intent of that outlet was supposed to be for a monitor on that wall, and the engineer of record, for whatever reason, did it as a standard outlet and box on the bottom. We coordinate that, and he'll move it because of the relationships that we build. He'll move it at no cost, so it's not costing the project another dime. Sean was accurate in saying that, like, it's a risk project whenever you go out there, because you don't know what team you're going to get there. It's not like a CM at risk where you're engaging them at design development. You're going to be getting a 149 procurement, even though it's pre-qualified, but you don't know who you're going to get at the end of it. We'll have a list of those contractors, but having reached out, like Sean was indicating, that we talk to some of these individuals periodically through the design to make sure that there's a strong vetted interest. When we get those 6 or 7 out there, these are all contracts that have done public safety, fire stations, that know that each of these components and program needs that you guys have, and have the ability to turn around and say, hey, listen, the designer said this. We could probably make this work a lot better, and it may meet your needs a little better at a little less money, and give you a credit change on it as you move forward. Those are the people that we've built relationships with to overcome some of those challenges. But we also hold them accountable. We track every single change, whether it's owner initiated, whether it's design initiated, whether it's an errors and omissions, whether it's inspector related, or whether it's a bad outbuy on FF&E. We track each of those costs associated against the project, and we track them throughout. I could tell you at any given time what the percentage of change orders are and why the reasons behind it. Part of the other risks and what we try to alleviate and avoid is just the details within the building. I mean, Erin, as an architect, you try to pick up everything you possibly can before it goes out to bid. But there's going to be times that I would love to have a designer here with you and any other OPM say drawings are perfect, because they're not. They're not going to be perfect. And what we try to do is minimize what kind of imperfection might be there, and try to have the foresight to say, catch it before it becomes astronomically high for the district or the town. So we try to, as we're going through it, there'll be times that, Amanda, Alyssa, or myself, we walk on the job site and we'll look at it and say, like, there was one particular project that they had glass set up within this conference room. Well, they left no caulking on the glass, so there was a separation, and they did it for I want to say architectural intent is the word I want to use. And I said, why would they do that? You're getting the sounds through the glass, and never mind that, any insect or how do you clean between the glass if anything gets between there? So we caught that well before the project actually was installed, and we created a no cost change order to seal it so that it prevented costs to the town later on. So we go through each of those steps to make sure that, we're ensuring that you're getting the best project, the best program for the costs associated with it.
And to your point too, with with second guessing the design, right? We're hiring these consultants in terms of commissioning, right? To look at your mechanical system, your electrical system, your plumbing, to make sure that it meets the spec and the design that was intended to make sure the contractor installed it correctly. We also do the independent testing labs when it comes to concrete or rebar or framing to make sure that those are structurally sound. So we'll have a company come out and do third-party testing. We document all of that. And those are all public documents. This is all a way that we cross-check the work that's being done.
And just the last part was sustainability. We make sure that, the code requirements require most buildings to meet the energy codes of today. And that gets you around LEED Silver based on that. But we look further than that. We make sure that conduits put in from your mechanical spaces up to your roof in case you ever want to go solar. Or if you want to partner with a solar company to be able to put them up there to offset some of the costs associated with your building. The other thing is antennas. We've physically gone on a ladder truck with a portable to see what size antenna you needed. And then we help procure, through the state bid list, what company you get to at the best possible cost to put an antenna in place. So I've been on a physical ladder with the fire department going up to finally figure out what height we needed for an antenna. And it gave us a better idea of procurement and how we solicit for that service. So we go well beyond out of our way to make sure that you get the building that you deserve.
Last slide. But we want to talk about communication, and communication goes in all directions, right? And communication needs to be constant in a project like this. And I'm sure this group has already started to communicate with the board of selectmen and other groups in town. And we're here to enhance that communication and help you with that communication. And whether it be preparing information to put on the town website so you can let the townspeople know what's happening, whether it's doing mail outs or flyers or brochures. And then there's also the communication right here. It's communication between design team and construction team. Do you want to talk briefly about that?
Sure. So our communication, like Sean said, it's constant, and it really starts before we're even hired on the project. We started our communication when Alyssa came to the informational walkthrough. That's when we start engaging in our communication pieces. And I think also another big piece of communication is listening. We listen. We're not just expelling, information to you guys. We're taking it in. We're listening to what your needs are, and then we're sort of translating that and helping, dissipate that throughout the necessary boards and committees and I guess regulatory boards, just, the community and make sure that we are communicating clearly with everyone involved in the project, all the stakeholders.
And clearing up miscommunications, which do happen.
Good point.
But that communication goes one step further. Like when we're on site, and Alyssa alluded to, we reach out to all our budding neighbors, and let them know who we are. We give them our card. You got any issues, you see us. We don't like the town administrator or the town manager to get a call. We like to have them resolved ahead of time, and we coordinate that. I mean, we've gone through a lot of projects where we'll look at the schedule, look at the 3-week look ahead, no steel's coming. We go out and let the abutters know. We notify the steel manufacturers that they're not to deliver at X amount of time, or they're not supposed, we'll provide a staging area outside the work hours to make sure that it happens appropriately. So, it's not just a matter of, communication between us, it's communication of the whole project. And that goes all the way to the general contractor. There's not a time that we don't have the superintendent's number or the owner's number of the construction company and be able to have some candid conversation with them. I've been on too many projects where, if you don't collaboratively build a team, it won't be, if the project construction company isn't successful, it makes the project difficult to complete, because if they're financially struggling, you can imagine some of the challenges you have at just getting the rest of it. But I'll tell you, we manage the project with an iron fist as well. If you if you bought it and you own whatever specifications, you're going to get it. We're going to make sure of that as we go, because we actually, with the 3-week look at, our on-staff representatives takes the look at, looks at what scope's being done, looks at all of the submittals on that to ensure that whatever's on site is what's being put into the building that's been approved. So the communication goes far further than just the communication between the architect. We do it through, the community, the public forums, and every other aspect of it. So.
Yeah, to add on to that too, at the community level, we want to make sure that they know what this project will be designed to do for the department in terms of, like, when I walked the walkthrough, we went through the issues. You need an expanded apparatus bay. You need the vehicles to fit in there. You need your gear to be protected from the sun and the moisture. You need your living quarters to be adequate for co-ed. And we want them to understand that these are not just wants, these are needs for this department. And getting that passed through the town vote with the debt exclusion by 2023, that's something that we want to make happen for you. Yeah. And at a community level, they need to know what's going on. And so we'll help you provide updates. We'll help you execute the strategies to help win them over and win this job. So we're excited to do that.
Alyssa made a great point. She just reminded me, one of the things I recommend is do a video of your existing station, and you put that on the public website just to show what it's a curse, because you guys are going to start cursing at you, saying, look at what you're making us live in. But it shows the public how much of a need you have for that particular building. So when you go in front of the town, they say, not only are they first responders, they dealt with all this pandemic, and look at the conditions they got. How can we not support them on that? And it's just a strategy that you put together as you try to move forward with that. So great.
So I'm sorry, and I apologize. We're passionate, and so our passion went over 20 minutes. And I know this is the first group you looked at, but hopefully it showed through that we love what we do, right? And we love helping build communities and helping them make this right. Because this is challenging, right? I just got off a volunteer board myself in my town. I live in Westwood, and I'm exhausted by it. It's a lot of work, but we were very lucky on that project that we had a good OPM, right? And the real value of a good OPM is someone who's in your corner every day, right? And like you said, not calling the town administrator, working with the abutters, understanding the needs of all the departments, right? Because there's nothing worse than have a design done and have the IT group come in and say, you didn't leave me any conduit space to do what I need to do, or why didn't you provide that extra conduit for a potential PV system? So, like I said, so we take a lot of passion in what we do and a lot of pride in what we do. We have a lot of experience. And what that means to Norfolk is that we're bringing that experience to you folks, right? We're bringing it here and saying, look, you know what your community needs. We know how to build fire stations and issues that have happened in the past and operational issues. And together we can find a solution that will work best for Norfolk. So with that, I'd like to open it up to questions or any points you want to.
Make sure you ask the hard ones.
I think that we only brought the hard ones. Well, thank you. It was a great presentation. So we do have a handful of questions here to go through. Hopefully we have enough time to get through them all. So first one, as I alluded to at the beginning, we're trying to make the decision if we need to renovate or rebuild. What do you see as kind of the critical first step in making that decision? Or maybe not even just the first step, but a critical piece of information that you need to make that.
Well, I'm not sure where you are in the process, but typically what I've seen is, program drives design.
Right.
And so I would hate to see the program have to take a backseat because we were afraid to spend an extra 10%. Right. And so, because as Joe said, this is a 50-year building. Right. And so, and we've done plenty of renovations that have come out great. That's not my point. But let's say you have a building that doesn't have the right floor to ceiling heights. If you have a building that just from a site layout, getting equipment, and Joe can talk more of this than I can, but getting equipment in and out of the space in a very safe and quick manner is important. So, it's different than, I guess every building has its own challenges, right? A library has public access challenges.
Yeah, but I think it all comes down to program. And I think what you need to do is nail down your program, nail down what you need for the facility. That would be my recommendation for the first step in this process.
And to determine, to directly answer your question, to determine whether it's an ad reno, it comes down to the building that you're looking at ad reno. I mean, is a structure, as a structural engineer, you know, is the height big enough to put the apparatus bays in that are undersized right now to be able to put the fire trucks in there and lift up a cabin? 9 out of 10 stations, if you're going to build it for the next 50 years, most of the fire department want to be able to work on the fire apparatus within the facility. So that means your height, you get some height restriction. It looks like, you know, from what the feasibility study was and the study they've done, that you're looking to add the apparatus. So you have the ability to build, you know, to make those requirements. Overhead doors versus doors that open up sideways. The response time on, you know, the quicker the doors that open, you know, the folding doors open up quicker than the overhead doors. But there are overhead doors that you can get that timeline that, you know, making sure that the apparatus doors have the floor drains adequately placed within the apparatus so that, you know, and having the floors thick enough and all of that. So it all comes down to your building. Once you look at your building, you're going to determine whether, you know, an ad reno, it makes the most sense. And that's based on not only the architects looking at it, but all of the engineers, electrical, mechanical, and structural. So
It's operations.
right. And yeah, your operations. Bottom line is that drives everything. And as Amanda alluded to, your program, once we know your program's nailed down, we can determine whether the building will need just an ad rental or whether we feel the building.
And just to add one little point to that, if I may, that sometimes you may also understand that, you know, you built this police station, there may be opportunity to have training over here so you can make the building a little smaller for the fire department or vice versa. Maybe there was a whole new regulatory on decontamination procedures or OSHA. There could be new OSHA regulations. And so most towns, when they have that and they're building a new building, they said, you know, what do we see in the future? What are we going to need? Do we have it at this facility, or is it something we should design a program into the new facility?
Right? We design for expandability. I mean, you'd be short-sighted if you didn't show that, you know, you could add another apparatus if equipment increased in sizes. So those are all things that we would look at.
Yeah. So based on what you've seen thus far and kind of what you've looked into, what do you see or anticipate as the biggest constraint, obstacle, or concern for this project specifically?
I can tell you the ad reno is going to be a challenge a little bit. I mean, without hesitation. So for anyone to look at you and say, oh, we've done this, I make sure that our team understands you're in operation. That operation is not going to get faulted in any shape, way, or form. We'll coordinate with the architect to make sure that, you know, his phase drawings, if it is an ad reno, gets done appropriately and it's safe for everybody. The last thing I want to see is that, you know, the construction's going on and there's turmoil between you trying to respond as a first responder to get out to an accident and the construction's holding you up. That will not happen. We'll make sure that there's separation between it. We'll make sure acoustically there's separation so that you can still run your department as needed. And we look at, you know, one of the other challenges is just going to be site logistics. I'm going to make sure that, you know, the laydown for the steel has adequate space away from what the department needs and still provide, you know, the department with space for laying out their hoses, drying out whatever it might be, or training, you know, within that portion of the building. The other aspect of it is not interrupting our electrical services. I mean, you're going to need an upgrade, no doubt in my mind, as you brought in an electrical service. How do you maintain the services that are currently there? We'll think that through and say, hey, listen, it's okay to do that. The cutoff and the switch out, we'll coordinate with the team and say, this is when it's going to happen. And we'll tell the contractor, no, this is when it's going to happen. And this is how you got to do it. So we'll make sure that is very detailed within the drawings on that.
That is a challenge. You know?
Yeah.
Other than that, it's easy.
Other than that, it's easy.
Thinking of a recent public safety or fire station project outside of the Oaks Bluffs occupied renovation, what are some lessons learned and how would you apply them to this project?
I'll tell, and I don't mind taking this one too. I've learned a lot of lessons. The Sharon Public Safety Building, I don't know if you're familiar with Chief Wright over there, but that building, we did it in a multiple phases. So we built the police station first, and the police station was out front. So the fire station was housed downtown, right where the town hall was at the time. What we learned was, you know, that was a very complex occupied addition, knocked down reno. So we had an emergency management building that was in the front. We knocked it down, but what we didn't realize is that we didn't realize that the emergency management used to keep barrels of oil there that they didn't keep a good eye on, and that oil leaked into the soil there. So what I would have done a little bit more is a little more exploratory. The problem was, and one of the challenges that we had is that to discover that, we had to take down the building. It wasn't evident that these barrels had leaked within the concrete floor. They had, dirt floor, and when it got contaminated, they just covered it up. And you know what I mean? So those were some of the challenges. The other aspect of one of the challenges was the apparatus space. It came clear and concise. Most mechanical engineers, they design today's heating systems to meet 7 degrees. That's the standard. Well, we've been having cold spell. I mean, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, we had them -9, -10 degrees. The heat recovery systems, because we're building them so efficient, we're not keeping them simple. You needed to be a rocket scientist to figure out how to work the energy management systems. So what we try to do is, and what I've learned from that is that one fireman wants a window open when he sleeps. The other one wants it shut with 2 blankets over him. So how do you manage a heating system effectively through a living quarters? So we looked at how we try to keep it simple within and we give a 4 or 5 degree swing depending on what's going there. But we educate through the training process to the building when we hand it over to you, because nothing's more frustrating, and 99% of the calls after a building is open is HVAC. So we make sure our commissioning agent and part of our office really goes through methodically at how the system is installed, what provisions are there, and what type of training is going to be needed for that. So those are all examples of lessons learned. The apparatus bay, and I explained to you the 65 degrees, I learned quick, they only put radiant heat in that floor. So when the doors all flew open during those low temperatures dropped down to 50, it took an hour and 40 minutes for it to try to recover, and that's not acceptable. So we ended, and how we fixed it creatively, I said, we had heated aprons, and most fire departments want heated aprons because they're not going to want to go out and shovel on an emergency lead. So what I did is I worked with the mechanical engineer. I said, listen, the heated aprons don't have to run 24/7. When the temperatures drop below 65 degrees, let's put a different run-in from the boiler to these modine units. We'll run the hot water. The same boiler can run the unit. When it satisfies, they shut down and the heat can go back to because you're not running the apparatus aprons all the time. And it was a $15,000 solution compared to what the mechanical engineer was going to design, almost a $90,000 install of this mechanic. So we've done it and we've thought about it and we've gone through it. So those are lessons learned. Sorry, John.
Yeah, at one point, and I'm looking at Matt, because being a facilities guy, I have a facilities background as well. And you touched on it very briefly, is a lot of these buildings that we're building now, the BMS, the building management systems, have become so complex that the people that are operating them or the people that are using the buildings can throw those systems are domino effects. You bring in too much humidity, then this thing triggers this triggers that. And next thing you know, you have moisture coming from the ceiling inside the building. And a good example of how committed we are to projects is we finished Medford Police Station during the heating season. Well, if everyone remembers what happened last week, it was like 84 or 85 degrees with high humidity. It was the first time the AC system had to kick in full bore. Well, guess what? Brought in too much humid air, started condensation on the windows inside the building. Well, we immediately got our own commissioning agent, CHA, and said, we need you down here to talk to the HVAC contractor, and we need you to tell us what the problem is so we can then broadcast back out and say, you have to do it, and Matt, you know this, you have to do it in this order. You can't fix this because that won't work until that is fixed up here. And so, that's the nice thing about having the deep bench of CHA, where we have mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers on staff. They don't get charged to your project. You don't pay for them, but guess what? When we need that quick advice, when we need that quick solution, they're there. So that's a big added benefit.
There's a lot of support in the community for the fire department, but there's still lingering frustration by residents about the cost of this project and what's left. That's not going to be enough. What strategies would you recommend a town like us deploy to get that support for that debt exclusion?
So Alyssa, do you want to talk about this? Because I think you probably have a lot of insight on this with communications.
In terms of both our cost estimating and communications, I can touch on both. For the cost estimating portion, we have our internal cost estimators that will build out how much they think the project is going to cost.
Right.
And at that point, we can value manage what we want to enhance, what we want to take out in order to meet the budget. And they account for escalation when they do those estimates. So we can, on that level, allow the community to understand what these numbers look like. On the other piece of it, we've done presentations, we've created websites, we've met with the community countless times to get them to understand what goes into the project and how the money's going to be spent. On a few of our other websites, we've even done like a tax calculator so they can understand what is going to be the impact on their financials to this degree of the cost of this project. So we have our resources to estimate those projects and also to evaluate the change orders and the unforeseen costs that come up. So does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Just to add to that is the public forums. Transparency is everything. I mean, when you have a project that you described of this nature where you had some overruns, you know, the trust kind of goes away from the community. And to regain that trust, you publicly have public forums. You discuss every aspect of it. You discuss every nuance. When we give you, like she alluded to cost estimating, we'll give you what the closest approximate cost based on today's cost associated with the most recent bid. So we know what their cost, you know, like we'll know mechanical, electrical's insane right now. Building materials are insane. So we understand all of that. So escalating that out just to have an understanding and making sure the design is aware of that through his design is going to be critical. But our public forums are dynamite because we'll actually show every aspect of what, you know, the fire department's requiring, but we'll also show what we're doing to minimize the cost back to the taxpayers. And they're going to have criticism because, you know, you had one project that had a little hiccup. We're not going to allow that to happen. I've been I'm not going back for more money from the town. You set the budget. We're going to build to the budget and meet that program needs, period. And how we save overruns, a great example is Middleborough. We got bids in. We had a $15 million project. The contractor's bid came in $200,000 over what we had estimated on. Is $200,000 a lot? To me, it is. It's a piece of equipment or something that the department couldn't buy. So we creatively did some cost saving measures within the building. We didn't cut program. We thought about, instead of putting epoxy floors, we put a roll lino in some spaces that could get away with it. When we did whatever we could within that building to make up to $200,000. What we also did is some creative procurement. So we went through and said, listen, let's buy off the state bid list. Let's take it away from the contractor because he's marking it up no matter what. And we bought those items and had them installed independently. So we do everything that we can to make sure that the community feels, you know, secure in what we're doing and making sure you meet your program needs.
I'm going to go off script here a little bit.
Going around.
Stick with the passion approach here. And I'll speak to sustainability a little bit here, sustainability initiatives. Norfolk's a green community now, recently voted in. We're talking about 50-year buildings. I hope sustainability is paramount or is going to be paramount in a lot of the discussions we have going forward. We're interested in hearing a little bit about not only meeting the energy code and the stretch code, but have you guys been involved in projects where you've creatively addressed the sustainability issues and not only met code, but exceeded it and delivered a building to the town that may actually deliver on all of the talk that we talk about so much in our profession?
I can talk about a little bit on my mother is very passionate about sustainability as well. And you could have heated this building with a candle. It was so efficient. The insulation, not only did we insulate the building, but we insulated the outside facade before the siding went up there. So basically by doubling the insulation, the cooling and heating was affected by that. And that's sustainability. That you're looking at long-term, you know, the cost savings in that measure. Even the glass that we did within the facility. It was triple pane and not double pane. That we looked at the budget, we had double pane in there, and we said we can do better than that based on our value. We ended up putting the third pane in there, and it saved us money. Collection of rainwater. No one today's, global warming, everybody's worried about utilizing, wells and surface water. We captured surface water. We put it within a plastic container, and we pumped out of that during that duration to irrigate, certain plants in the lawn. So we look at a lot of different avenues. Lighting alone within the facility. LEDs have changed so much. Even the materials that we're using for carpeting, like fossil fuel to make up the oils within the carpet. We looked at different materials to try to keep it more green. So that we're not just building a building to build the building it and make sure its sustainability lasts for 50 years.
And I was going to just add to that, even just looking beyond the building itself, but adding electric vehicle chargers to the parking lot, that's something that we've done on projects as well that really benefits the community. Sometimes there's a little discussion about how those are going to be used amongst the community, and if it'll be just strictly for the departments themselves, or if they'll be available for the community to purchase electricity. But providing that to the community, it goes beyond the building. So we look at those types of strategies as well.
Yeah, and then even like porous pavement. Right. So it's not just it's sustainability of the site as well. Right. So it's making sure that we're not throwing everything into storm drains and it's going down to a river that we want to keep, a lot of the groundwater to stay on site. A lot of sustainability, even just landscaping, where we try to pick hardier plants that are New England based as opposed to just, the typical where people just pick them and then they might live, they may die. Right. And so we look for opportunities to do more hardy plantings. Joe mentioned it about insulation, but I have a passion for passive house design, and we do a lot of schools now. And if you're familiar with the school program in Massachusetts, the MSBA, but they're very, very big on passive house, which for those that might not know, has to do with more on how you insulate the building, how you separate elements so you don't have heat transfer out of the building. So it's design decisions that are made that. Maybe they cost a little more to do on the upfront costs, but from the long-term life cycle costs, and life cycle costs are truly important, because that's what the town, when you talk about, things that interest the taxpayers, they're interested in what's the long-term operational cost of the building. And so sometimes we've seen this in meetings where they'll go for the higher cost because they know there's been thought put into it, and there's a reasoning behind it, and the reasoning why we're doing these things. And Joe's example on the aprons, first time I heard tonight, is fantastic, because right sizing the boilers, right, for the building, and just being smart about zoning and how we manage that heat. I always think about the old days, where houses had no insulation, single pane glass, but oil was 19 cents a gallon. So you just kept it coming, and that's how you got through it. So, and that's what's nice too, is, we're passionate about fire stations, but we also are fortunate enough to deal with other programs like the MSBA and with colleges and universities that really, they have a big push to be carbon neutral. We talk about embedded carbon, and whether there's products we can, does everything have to be concrete? Can we go with other natural surfaces or stone? And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to have those discussions, and I think it's healthy. I mean, I think that it ends up being trade-offs like anything at the end of the day.
There's a balance between it. Matt's got to deal with it. And do you deal with most of the public buildings now?
Yes.
So that's sustainability has to be within reason as well. So you can put something in place, but it's got to be able to be maintained as well. Like the porous concrete, I agree for any training area for that, but for him to be able to come out and plow it, I mean, it wouldn't work for the apparatus aprons or any of the emergency egress, but there's plenty of areas to be able to utilize that into that. So without hesitation, there's a lot of thought that can go into it.
Looking forward to our cross-laminated timber fire station.
I am too.
So we feel like we kind of finalized the four great firms, and we wouldn't have selected you to come interview if we weren't thrilled with your experience. And I kind of want to reiterate that, you know, when we pick somebody here, we're picking the team. We're not necessarily picking CHA. We're picking the team that's here in front of us. And that's something that's really important to us. I guess, what do you feel if you had to pick one thing that kind of separates you from some of the other firms that we're going to interview?
It's our passion, completely, 100%. You know, I started off the discussion today talking about that, you know, we're here because we know we have the right team for this job. You know, we're not here we don't need the experience, right? We've done enough fire stations, we've done enough public buildings. So what's more important to us is that we deliver on our promises. And delivering on our promises means putting the right team forward, knowing that the people you see here tonight are the same people we're going to celebrate with when we have the ribbon cutting ceremony. That they're here and they're committed to stay.
And I just want to add to that, yeah. Sean, you know, we're with you through the entire project, but even, I may have said this earlier, but even after we hand the keys over, you know, it really wouldn't be unusual for one of us to stop into the station and see how things are going. You know, it might be Joe's boyhood dream of being a fireman that he's playing out as an
I did take the exam,
but you might not be able to get rid of them. But really, we really care about the communities that we work with, and we stick around kind of long after the project's over and check in and make sure things are going well with the building, make sure things are going well with the staff, because we get to know them throughout the whole process.
And we also want to know what works, because sometimes some design decisions might actually not pan out, and it's great to get that feedback, because then we know.
And I can tell you, we don't, you know, substitute as we move forward. We work as a team collaboratively. Each one of us are going to know every step as we move forward. I talk to Amanda and Alyssa more than I do my wife lately. And it's just because we communicate that much. And the other thing is, there's not a time that the town administrator, the director of facilities, the fire chief, or any building committee member, you call the other chiefs and look at our references, ask them if they call at 8:30 at night whether a phone gets picked up. It does. Because at the time, that question's important to them. They wouldn't be calling me if it wasn't. And it's able to be transparent enough to be able to give them that answer, to be able to give to whoever in the public needs to have that answer. I mean, this Saturdays, I get a call because a delivery truck showed up, and I'll go out and visit that particular person. We're here for the duration. And it's true, you know, ribbon cutting is only part of it. We got another whole year of building warranty items that we deal with. And we actually put a format together that you can actually fill your building warranty. But we also have a log that you track by. It's an Excel spreadsheet, but it's very detailed to say when you made the call, who you talked to, who it went to, what the resolution was, and who signed off on it. It's extremely important, because nothing's more frustrating than going through that process and not having someone pick up on the other end, or once your fee is paid, you're done. That's not how we work. I mean, there's projects I'm dealing with currently right now, 4 years after we're done, and we're coming up with alternative solutions. There's some challenges they had with the program as they move forward, and we're there to help out all the way through it. That's building relationships. So
one of the decisions the committee's going to need to make at some point as we manage the cost of everything is to decide whether or not we need a clerk of works, and if we do we need one full-time in a project, which some might call small, some might call big, or part-time. So some thoughts on that for.
You need a full-time clerk on a $10 million project. To have them part-time, there's too much construction going on in a 14-month period to have a clerk only there half-time, in my aspect. But we would build our clerk within our associated fee when we negotiate it with you. And we haven't, not yet, been able to agree on a fee with any town, so.
Let's keep picking on the architects here.
I like that.
So let's say that the architect just isn't performing. What are we going to do?
There's a lot of things we can do. You know, the person that holds the money is everything, obviously. You know, there's certain proportions as we move forward. We hold them accountable to every aspect of that. So, you know, there's milestones, and Andrew and I are dealing with this currently right now. Everybody knows that, and I'm not saying architect, all of them do that, but they front load because they're paying consultants, and they feel that justifiably a lot more effort goes into the design, but CA is just as important. You know, I can't tell you how many times we've gone through a design and we run into a challenge, or we point out a challenge, and then the architect, I don't have time to do, that's a lot of BS. It should have been, corrected initially in that. So we hold them accountable through notifications. We pull, like just recently, I'm having a project in Westport. What we ended up doing is we meet once a week. I said, time out. It's not working how you're doing that. We're meeting 3 times a week right now until these resolutions get taken care of and the RFIs are caught up. We call their consultants to attend some of the job meetings. I don't like to air the laundry out in front of the building committee. You should hear, just the steps on there. Behind the scenes, we're making sure that they meet all of those milestones, make sure all the RFIs are answered appropriately. If there's a PCO and a price request is out there, we get it and it's adequately priced, and not just to try to fix the problem and make it go away. We make sure that the town's getting the right product, the right design, and the right fix for it.
But Joe, you said it earlier, and I think that's an important part, is we look to partner. We're not, right? At the end of the day, we're building a fire station, and we want to make sure you get the best fire station and that we deliver it as promised. And so in order to keep our promises, it's important, we talked earlier about the communication. And so we developed that relationship where, Joe, we were just on the phone Friday on the phone with the architect and saying, look, we helped you with this, we helped you with this, we helped you with this. Now we need your help. You need to stand up and help. And so it's not an overlord management style, but it's more of a team building that we go through.
Yeah.
And then when we need the help, we're not shy to ask for it. And so,
want to be firm.
So it's really trying to find that balance of collaborating and team building, and then time to step up to the plate, right? And so, it happens with CMs, it happens with architects. Nothing goes as planned. Teams get stretched. Situations pop out of the blue. And sometimes it's hard for people to react quickly. Not that they don't want to, not that they don't try to, it's just that they just can't. And so often our conversations will sound like, what can we do to help you?
Right.
And what can we do to help you solve this? Because it's not getting solved and we need to make it happen.
And onset, we did a fueling pad. A great example is, one of the other solutions that we did is that they wanted a fueling station, and they couldn't afford it. It was $60,000 added to the project. So I came up creatively and said, we're going to need a generator here. Let's oversize the belly tank. We'll put a pump onto that, and they can circulate diesel fuel so that it's not coming stagnant, because you only use so much on a generator, firing it once a week for an hour. So we ended up doing that. But in order to do that, we had to put a fueling pad in for the trucks to pull up to. So when the designer came up, they gave us a design with a 1-inch lip all the way around it. Well, it was a great bird bath when it rained, right? No way of really fixing that. So I'm like, what were you thinking? So we ended up, we were able to put V-grooves, we grinded V-grooves around our fueling pad to capture that. And we were able to create a metal pan over it so that the fuel would get captured, but the water would sit within that fueling pad. But we not only creatively came up with a solution to have a makeshift fuel station there, because the tanks can be double walled and meet all the DEP requirements. We were able to creatively work with the architect to correct the solution for a $3,000 fix rather than tearing it up and having a $7,000 repair later on.
John, I know they talked about life cycle costs a little bit already. I don't know if we had any follow-up questions for them.
If we have time.
Sure.
So you guys you mentioned it, but it's very important to me, and I think it's important to the team. What is your approach to life cycle costs? Do you look at just the major systems? Do you look at the entire building, like including, the envelope, the insulation, the operations, and the full life of the building, including like equipment that'll reach an end of life before the 50 years?
Yeah. So what we do is, if you're familiar with uniformat versus CSI, so uniformat's a methodology where you look at a building system based. Most people are familiar with CSI, which is, people talk about forming and rebar and steel and electrical and plumbing and everything else. So to your point, when we look at life cycle, we want to understand how the systems work dependently and depend on one another. And then we want to talk about, like you said, differing life cycles, because for instance, if you build an air handler inside a space and the space is going to last 50 years, but the air handler is only going to last 25 years, you need to know how you're going to either replace that, remove it, or take it out of the building. And you don't want to have additional costs associated with moving plumbing and everything else, or opening up the roof. And so, to your point, is understanding the building as a system, as how an interconnected system, and what pieces will fail. So one of the first things we do is we do two things. And we actually use the facility manager to give us a lot of this information, because we can look at what the manufacturer says the lifespan or expected service life is. But then we ask really how long does this stuff last in practice, based on maintenance, based on how you're able to keep it. And we use those numbers, the actual historic lifespan that we experience. And so, for instance, I'll give you an easy example. And you talked about facade. So a lot of times, and often in buildings, a south-facing facade is going to perform completely different than a north-facing facade. But often this facade's the same facade around the building. And so one of the things we look at during design is to say, okay, should we add different kind of AVB, air and vapor barrier on this side of the building versus the other side? How is it going to perform long-term? Or because there are two facing sides of the building, have we just shortened the lifespan, because you're not going to replace metal siding 25 years from now and expect it's going to match the metal siding on the other side. And so we look at these, I call them weak points, as far as life cycle costing, and then use those lower numbers to get a more realistic view of what the overall cost to maintain, not cost to operate. Because to me, cost to operate is efficiency and fuel and utilities, but a cost to maintain is what is it going to take to maintain this long term. For instance, the town of Needham built a DPW type building, and they used the salmon. It looks like, I call it the salmon, because it has these triangular metal siding panels. Mm-hmm. And it looked great. And I just went by it literally yesterday, and a tree branch fell and rippled half of the side of the building. So now the question is, now what do you do? Right? Do you tear off that whole side, and can you even buy that salmon colored siding anymore? So these are the kind of decisions where, from a designer, and I can't talk to an architect because I'm not one, but, there's aesthetically, there's performance, and there's maintenance, and they're all important decisions. And it's often a trade-off, and that's okay. Like, you might want this look, but realize it's not going to be maintained as easy as this. So I'd say a lot of discussions during design are just those 3 points, right? Absolutely. Performance, aesthetics, and maintenance.
And I think there's a lot of trade-off too. You get your options, and then you start to make your priorities. Because although you'd love to have a building that lasts 50 years, and all the systems last 50 years, and everything is just perfect until that 50-year mark, obviously there's costs associated. So, there's give and take, but it's a process to just review all those little pieces.
And to your point, the first thing that happens, and Matt could probably confer, maintenance gets deferred. I mean, it's just town budgets, police department, doesn't matter what you look at. So what we try to do is, and that's the reason why you need new buildings as you move forward, because deferred maintenance only domino effects. It continues, and you get more and more down the road. So what we look at is components within the building. Like, you are going to have to replace your boiler after a certain period of time, as Sean alluded to, providing enough space, the adequate basement door size to be able to get it in, get it out, and change it out without having to tear apart, the building to get at it. That example to the siding couldn't be more true. We had the Onset Fire Station, we got raised seam metal siding on the roof section. Well, the antenna company that we hired to come in there, they drilled the holes in the wrong spot. So now you're not only affecting the outside facade, you're affecting the vapor barrier. So how do you make that longevity of getting a warranty back there? We held the antenna company responsible. We're replacing that whole facade on there. But in doing so, we set what my recommendation was. We seamed the open seams towards the opening towards the parking lot. So we were able to remove the panels only to a certain point and meet the dialogue and put it back together without having to tear apart the whole facade on that. When we took off the siding, we made them fix all the vapor barrier too, because the penetrations went right through that. And then come to find out, the antenna company turned around and said, "Oh yeah, by the way, we could do a roof install without having any penetration. Why didn't you recommend that?" But those are the type of things that, we have challenges with. And to the point, like, I can tell you, I was the director of facilities at Bridgewater State College, and deferred maintenance happens I don't care every town, every district, and we try to, and we try to, you know, have that forward thinking to say, you know, in the event that it's going to be changed, how are we going to deal with it? Changing filters.
And it goes back to, once again, is not to belabor it, but design systems that are easy to maintain, that people can understand, that people can use. I mean, that's why the Nest thermostat took off, right? Because someone's like, because, you know, when the Nest first came out, I thought, what could be simpler than a thermostat? But apparently there can be a thermostat simpler than a thermostat. And a lot of these systems, if they do become too interdependent or they become too complicated, then the people using the building, like I said earlier, or trying to maintain them, falls behind. And then you do get that difference. So.
Hope that answers your question.
That's great.
I think that's our time. I don't know if does anybody else have any other questions they want to ask?
I thought you were going to ask the hot ones.
You guys are good.
I have maybe a quick one. Do you recommend or do you routinely have building envelope commission?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Not only that, but we do water testing. Just on a project, we just did the windows. So not only the you've seen this when you go by maybe a construction site where you have a mock-up of a little bit of a wall and a window. So if it's a window system, we're worried about the connections and the flashing, that we'll water test that as a mock-up. And then when we start doing the install, we'll water test again, because we want to be on window number 1 and know there's a problem, not 50 windows later and then all of a sudden you guys have a problem.
But it goes from the testing agency that we engage as well. Like we'll have right through from the time the CMU or structural seal goes up in glass. When the vapor barrier goes up, we have someone monitoring that whole process, testing it, doing pull tests on it to make sure that the adhesion, making sure we are on-site clicks. And that's why I think it's so important. They take gauges if they're putting mastic on there before they do it, make sure that the thickness of the mastic is adequate. So we engage all of those specialists to make sure that the building is built the way it was designed.
Well, great. Well, if you have questions out, you know, we're first and we know we're setting the bar high for everyone. So, but if a question comes up that maybe like, geez, I really wish we asked CHA that, please email us and we'll get right back to you. Yeah.
And I do recommend, if you haven't, call the other chiefs. They'll tell you what we're all about.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Pleasure meeting you. I do mean that. The town administration should be getting calls.
Yeah.
You get more than you share.
Yeah, I know John knows.
Oh, yeah, I know him really well.
Me too. He's a force like himself.
Did you mention my name too?
I'm not at all. I mentioned Carver. I know he lives there. And he lives on the railroad.
Yeah, he does.
That's the railroad.
He's
If anybody needs to use the restroom, it's right around the corner.
He's building a house up this way.
Okay.
If anybody wants any building tours, we have a few minutes, I can do that as well.
He was revitalized.
Yeah, exactly. What do you work for?
He's got a lot of energy.
Oh, yeah.
Irish? Okay,
Yeah, that's too funny.
Yeah.
He's got a
No, I haven't talked to him in 3 years. I'm curious.
So I had
think he did fireys on
Yeah,
that.
He was on the fire.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did a police station with David.
And you were in the National Guard?
Yes, I was in the Army.
Yeah.
But mostly we do a lot.
I'm an engineer.
It was a pleasure meeting you. Good luck. I wish you well in your endeavor.
Oh,
Good to see you again.
You too.
yeah.
You guys out?
Nice meeting you, Matt. Thank you.
Right when that came up, I
Yeah, that's basically.
Nice meeting you.
Is there no way to be found?
Yeah, it's
July 01.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's all right. We'll find them, they're probably not there.
Right now.
Because one structure, I actually has Park Corporation, so we do all types of civil things, like.
I'll tell you what, you'll have, I'm sure, have a keen look at that building structure, because you know the ceiling's dry. When the structure interferes with the organic quality. And I always tell them, couldn't you add another foot to the structural steel, but then the cost goes to the roof.
Yeah.
Try that at the time, you know. Thank you, guys. Nice to meet you. Good luck. Good luck.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Yeah. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Nice to meet you. All right. Thanks. Gentlemen, thank you.
Nice to meet you. I just like our building license, because the master of the law.
AC's here, AS.
Sean, your team is leaving.
Oh, sorry.
It's important.
No, I know, yeah, he can't really coming around. It's all,
Yes.
Romeo Soldier's home, and that's a big push right now.
Yeah, you said,
Yeah.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you.
A lot of my peers deployed 11, 12.
Around 11.
I enlisted as a medic in the reserves in 03. And then I jumped in ROTC in 05. Public Field Mission in 08. That's great.
Yeah, I worked it. I considered a lot of things. I wanted to make a career out of it. That's what I have now. So
Yeah.
it worked out.
That's not good interview out of the gate.
They were ready.
Yeah,
All
tough
four.
choice.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Well, you just come down to who do they fits the best with our needs.
Who picks on the architects the least?
Who picks on the architects the most to make sure on this job we don't win.
It's funny from my perspective, sometimes architects try to win awards as opposed to design a building. I know of some fire stations in other states that design awards that now a year later the building doesn't function the way it was supposed to because it's settled incorrectly or
Yeah.
whatever happened.
Let's see if someone talks about shooting bar. That's shooting bar. Maybe not with wood prices the way they are. That's some burnished steel or something.
So I'm just checking out my guys' work. Quick inspections.
This is,
I am blindly ignorant of that though, like
Kevin comes
aesthetics.
back, I'll go get
Like
the
heels and
guys.
things.
Also, one of my favorite fire stations I think ever is the one in Carver because it just fits the community so well. Like, it's designed or like how it looks pleasant.
There might be 3D printing fire stations by the time you get around, so.
My city hasn't built a new one since like 1968, so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You know Pat Hayden?
Yep.
I'm in, it's in my garden.
I
worked with him
a while, for 4 or 5 years in the same company.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. You must know that I have them down there, 20 months ago. And I think they're all in together.
That sounds familiar. Yeah, when I was in the.
Matt's
garden,
here,
him,
Joe
back-
Lynch is like, oh, Brian, you.
Nice. So now we're not in that same company anymore, but just recently come over. Small detachment.
Shall I go get the next team?
Well, sure.
Or
It's weird. There's an 05, 404s, 503s, and then there's like 4 enlisted dudes. What is a captain that is the detachment commander?
Wow.
So 03, it's like.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
So there's a tech was like that. We had a E8 was like the senior, but like your junior guys, were like teenagers. Got like one more. There's like one per.
Yeah, this one I deployed twice. Both of my. If I could do my last 2 years.
What's their focus?
Facilities. It's an engineer facilities attachment. We were advisors to the Afghan National Army's Engineer Corps in Turkey. And then we ran the DEW at Camp Deering in Kuwait. So it's kind of like that. I mean, I think it's stood up to run like a base camp, like initial base camp.
Yeah.
But we're not doing that. We haven't done that in a long time.
It'll be a while before we do that.
We've got KBR to run Kandahar. We don't need it.
John, are you still working from home?
Yeah, exclusively.
Lucky.
Probably for the foreseeable future.
I have Rise coming out at the end of the month. We're gonna do a little bit more. We met with the DOER, and what I really wanted to do is nail all the Freeman Kennedy has all ballasted fluorescents. The exteriors are LEDs, but it's all occupied. It all has occupancy switches and everything, but they have a fluorescent. So I wanted to do ballast bypass and everything there as one project. And wanted to finish the olive day and then do the exterior lighting, put some sort of control besides mechanical time clocks. But the state's saying they don't want us to do, they're not going to support it. So now we're going to work further on putting BMS into that building to head in and finish the lighting in the building. But that's going to be.
Or you're making a.
Supposed to be-
Supposed to be
Yes.
working on it.
There's a HDMI here on the ground.
Okay, it wasn't supposed to be on the ground. so-
You are.
It's all right.
Yeah, so that's why it's, yeah, so you are,
All three screens.
Perfect.
so, but,
And,
so
you guys can-
the basically said, even though you agree ROI on the lighting, we want to diversify what we're going to do. Save. So,
You want to reach out to.
yeah, would you like to partake in the review?
For sure.
Also,
When do you want to start?
one thing I'm exploring right now, besides some solar, is the state and federal government have some amazing programs out right now for charging stations. I see zero cost to the town to install, including equipment.
I heard they got really, really good. They were decent. I've heard that.
Eversource is putting 100% their infrastructure in. They run their own transformers. They doesn't tie anything into the building whatsoever. And then there's some other grants there. So it's 60 to 80 to 100 municipalities for battery charging. And they also run an additional conduit as part of the deal is they run for future growth. So we're looking at that as well. Just to see if it would work, but we're waiting on numbers right now. And obviously the town's liability would be you to do a 5-year, that you'll maintain it for 5 years. You can charge whatever you want, but any damage, whatever it's on us, so they want you to buy basically a maintenance agreement for $25 for each 2 spots. So that's where it kind of gets. But we're looking at all different sites to try to, if we can get on it for free, why not? So, but we have to make sure it's good for everything, so.
Yeah. However, I can help, like you said.
I know that, I know I have you in the back.
I'm glad. Yeah. You know, working for the states. It's a slow.
I'm waiting on numbers right now in this building. I have to go back in front of the planning board because we're going to try to, solar. We designed it on the roof, but we also want to put,
It would be good.
solar canopies. Yeah, he's not going to be there, but I'll take it for him and pass it along to him.
Do we need any others?
No, good.
I'll take it. Thank you. The fire department guys would love to read it, I'm sure. Guarantee they're watching right now.
Have they been watching that?
Yes, they have. They're very interested. They're keeping up with this, so.
You're not watching it. On YouTube.
Yeah. You want to be anonymous.
I was recognized by that last week.
We have a great bunch of guys and yeah, we talk frequently.
People.
We have a great group of fire department staff and people and they're very eager and watching and very interested.
No pressure though.
Not ever.
We're used to it, I'm sure.
Unfortunately, it's part of the job. So we all get pretty comfortable in front of the camera and behind the podium. And I sat Saturday at a town meeting in Chatham, which was outdoors, and it was supposed to be a rainy day, and then all of a sudden and so everybody prepared for the rain. And all of a sudden, the skies opened up and the sun came out. Me personally didn't have any sunscreen on, no hat. I'm sitting there going, Jesus. I almost felt like leaving and going getting some. I
I thought for sure you were going to say just when you walked up to the podium and there was a beam of sun.
Yeah. I'll use that next time. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. I'm sorry that we were running a few minutes late. Kind of give you a little introduction. We can go around and introduce ourselves, and then you guys can introduce yourselves and launch into whatever you brought. I'm Kevin Champagne. I'm the chair of the Fire Station Building Committee. I'm a structural engineer by trade. So this project has been really a few years in the making, although we formed this committee maybe 3 or 4 months ago. It was originally planned to be part of the public safety project, where middle of town had public safety building with both police and fire. The decision was made to separate the police station to the building we have here. Renovation of the fire station was supposed to take place as part of that project. There were some complications with this building that resulted in really not enough funding left over to properly renovate or add on or replace the fire station. We still have some funds remaining to take us through design, certainly to cover design, but we will obviously, once we go to construction, need to procure more funds. So really the critical first step to us is getting the right OPM on board, and hoping that that's where you come in. So introduce ourselves around the room. Aaron?
Aaron Hunt, architect by trade.
I'm Justin Janicek, I'm a firefighter. Chris Baker, civil and geotech engineer by trade.
John Kent, I'm an energy project manager for the state.
Mike Robinson, the town administrator.
Matt Hapner, the facilities director for the town schools.
And unfortunately, Chief Kenny couldn't be here tonight. With that, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much for having us here this evening, and we appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you. My name is Rick Pomeroy, and I'm the owner and principal of Pomeroy Associates. To my left is Taylor McDonald, my business partner and senior project manager with the firm, and Virgil Pacheco, project manager. Our staffing for this project, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about us. It's all in the package, but we just wanted to give you some of the particulars for this project and how we see it unfolding from our staffing perspective. I will be the project director for the project, and I oversee all of the projects that the company undertakes, and we'll talk about our projects and what we pursue and how we get selected with our projects. I'm available 24/7 for my entire staff and any of our clients. I'm available for this project on an as-needed basis. The strengths that I bring are effective communication and negotiation skills, working with the architects and contractors and the client, of course. I have a decent amount of experience in design. I began working as an architect in Boston, and then worked in general construction and finance. Development and budget, development management and budget are some of my major strengths when it comes to our projects. I worked for a national real estate investment trust in the healthcare field for years, managing extensive amount of money in development financing. And I have a keen sense of problem solving and getting into the weeds on our projects, and it works well with our team. To my left is Taylor McDonald, our senior project manager. Taylor will be your day-to-day point of contact. He brings with him a wealth of knowledge and experience. He may look a little wet behind the ears, but don't let that fool you. A lot of these, most of our very successful projects have been spearheaded by Taylor. He's a very unique team builder. He works quite well with our clients and with our consultants and our contractors. He's got very strong communication skills, and his unique awareness of everybody's strengths and weaknesses and abilities is very unique as far as I'm concerned. So it allows him, when he's managing a project, it allows him to look at every individual a little bit differently and looking, maybe we're tapping into their strengths, maybe we're identifying their weaknesses in order to manage the project as a whole. It's a very unique quality. It works very well with our clients. It works well within the organization. And what we like to do is we like to put the team together. Not everybody is good in everything. So, we like to look at this from a bigger picture and what are my strengths and weaknesses? What are Taylor's strengths and weaknesses, Virgil's, and the other people in our company? The varying complexities of the consultants and the contractors and the clients is something that Taylor keys in on. We're not architects. We're not civil engineers. We're not geotech engineers. We manage those consultants, and being able to speak that language and to understand where someone is coming from when they're discussing those types of in a meeting, say, because let's face it, everybody from different disciplines almost speaks a different language, although it may be English. So understanding that, disseminating it, and managing it is a very strong strength that Taylor brings to the table. Virgil Pacheco will be our project manager. Taylor will be our point person, day-to-day operations and in charge of the project. Virgil will be supporting the entire team, and namely the senior PM, Taylor. Taylor has a lot of the same strengths, team management and communication and organizational skills.
Virgil does.
I'm sorry, Virgil.
That's why we work together so well.
Virgil also has design experience. He has worked in the general contractor field as well, and which is a very strong attribute from our perspective. Cost estimating, schedule management, procurements, those types of things are very strong attributes that Virgil brings to the table. Besides the team you see here, we have support staff. I'm looking at Bob Rice, who's just coming off of the Norfolk Public Library project, is another one of our team members, and he'll be, filling in where needed on a day-to-day basis. And I'm really happy Jessica Martin, she's an assistant project manager, just got her CSL license, and she is just finishing up Norwell Public Library as well. So she's going to be available for this project, and she's a real dynamo. I really enjoy working with her. Aside from that, that's our team here. QA, QC, quality control, quality assurance. Charles Fox, who's been working with me for 25 years now. Virgil, Bob Rice, Taylor, myself, we all get involved with the QA, QC reviews for the documents before they hit the street. And as you know, this is very early on in the project. So naming a clerk of the works is not something that would be proven at this time because it's just too far down the road. But we do not hire out our clerks. We have on-staff clerks. We don't do any 1099s for our employees. Everybody is full-time employees with an excellent benefit package. Health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, those types of things. So we keep our employees, and it's a family for us. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of the team that we've built and the clients that we've served. So I'm going to sit down and let Taylor take over.
Great. I just want to even comment on a couple of those things. And we use clerk because that's kind of the term in the industry for that person that's on site watching what's going on in construction. We don't hire clerks, we hire project managers. So we expect anybody that's out there in the field to be able to act as a project manager. That's very key when you're trying to keep things on schedule, make sure the right product's being used and installed. We're not hiring somebody to go out there and count nails and take pictures. So who we hire, we expect them to be a face for the town out there on the project. So
I did not mention our cost estimator.
And cost estimating, we use Noriko Hall of Myakota. I'm sure those in the industry have heard of her or have worked with her. She used to be the head estimator at Daedalus, and she's since gone off on her own. So we like to work with her as much as we can. We wanted to just quickly show kind of our typical project timing. In a typical year, we'd like to have, we call it the 33% rule. So many projects in construction, so many in feasibility, and so many in design. That keeps our wheel moving. That keeps people employed. Like Rick said, we don't go out and hire just for a job. We like to have work in progress. So when somebody comes off a job, they're moving to a next one. So that means we have to have so many jobs, in construction at a time. So this past 2020 pandemic year, what we saw happen was the projects that were in design finished up. The project or continued to work through and finish up. Those in construction, we were able to keep all of our jobs moving. A couple had a small blip, but we effectively managed all of them throughout construction. The Semrec Center we just did in Foxborough, that was completed throughout the pandemic without stopping once. So we did a very good job of keeping that train moving. But what we saw were the projects in the feasibility study portion kind of get pulled and stopped. Those are now coming back online. Firms and towns are going, back out for money and starting this process up again. So what that did is now we're seeing, a gap in kind of design projects. And so we need to fill in that gap. And what we'd like to do is, get as many projects into design as we can at this point. So this fits in perfectly with kind of our wheel of projects that we see going at this time. Our philosophy on construction management, just want to hit a couple items here. I know we're kind of pressed for time, but prior to construction, proper planning and implementation is huge. Budgetary management, cost estimating, and VE. A lot of this comes from Rick's background. When he started the company, when somebody went over budget, when under the terms that he was working, somebody lost their job. Here, a lot of companies have the idea that we can go back to town money and get more funding. We don't do that. We look up front and try to get the project funding correct the first time. We don't want to be going back and asking for more money. We don't want townspayers walking into a building and saying, I can't believe we spent our money on this. Why didn't we look at these options? Why didn't this come up? That sort of thing. So even if we have a very healthy budget, we still go through a value engineering process to make sure we have fallback options if we run into trouble. We put those in, we come up with them. We ask the architect to come up with them. We put together a list. We put pricing to them. And there are things that may come back if we go out to bid and we come back favorably. Maybe there's things we can add back in. But we don't like to go all in on everything unless we absolutely have to. Again, it's the responsibility of the town to use that money wisely. And we don't want anybody to look like they have egg on their face at the end of a project when it comes to the dollars. So that is something that we take extremely seriously. Inequality control and design documents going out. As Rick said, we do a red line set of the drawings at least once. We usually do that around 90%. Full set review. I do one, Rick does one, Virgil does one. We get all those comments, compile them. It could be 500 comments. We send it back to the architect and make sure those are looked at before they go out on the street. Along with that, specifications and bid documents that are going out, contracts. We have ones that we've worked with other towns on that have worked well. We've seen favorable results, so we like to bring those into the fold if we can.
So I just want to add something to that. We 20 years we've been doing this in the municipal sector. We haven't had one project that went into litigation or arbitration. We haven't had any projects where liquidated damages have had to be imposed upon the contractor. The reason for that is I feel that we have very sound management practices that we follow, but a big component of that is getting a quality set of documents out on the street. Low change orders, no arguments, no litigation. Our change order ratio is exceedingly low. And that's because of the time that we put into the project, into the drawings before they go out on the street. We make sure that during the planning and implementation stage that we've explored all of our options for life cycle cost analysis for our materials and our equipment and our systems. We make sure that the client knows exactly what is being proposed and or what they're purchasing. And we make sure that the set of documents that go out on the street, no drawings are perfect, but we try to get them as close as possible. And all of that equates to very efficient budgets, no litigations, and extremely low change orders. If you look at our change order logs in our original package, you see that in most cases, we break it up into several different components. Our design-related change orders are below 1%. I think we're below 0.5%. Our owner-related change orders are considerably higher, and that's because we drive the budget down. We don't lose quality of the project, but we make sure that there's funds there. So if the owner decides they want to improve the material being used for something or add an addition to the building, they have the money available to do so after you get your general bids. Maybe it's built in by add alternates, but we like to make sure that we manage a very extremely tight budget, and then allow the client to make the decisions that they like to on the project. I'm sorry.
Can I add one thing to that? So we recently bid the Sandwich Center for Active Living $13 million job, and we came across some hard decisions that we had to kind of hold budgets to the number that we were given as we were kind of entering it while we were kind of working in this, COVID, environment. And as a result, our bids came in approximately $2 million under budget. So we've had calls with the owner to now go back to that list of BE items and slowly start to introduce those in, as kind of Taylor and Rick have mentioned. So I think that's kind of the key, is to kind of hold it tight at the beginning.
Right. There's a combination of two things. Post-pandemic surge. So we bid it in January, February. December, January, February. So everybody knew that the pandemic was coming to an end and everybody wanted work. So the contractors are extremely aggressive. And we also made sure that we took out all of the not premium items, but that would like to have items and put them on the shelf so that we could be assured that our number was going to come in under budget. Now we're going through the exercises to add those back in. And so it works.
Absolutely. And during design, as Rick touched on as well too, we take a team building approach, definitely in construction. The goal of the project should be to finish the project, a responsible finished project for the owner. The architect isn't there to make the Taj Mahal. We're not there to, fill our coffers. We're there for the owner, and we're there to get that job done. So I make that apparent at our job meetings, and nobody has a chairman role at the table, and I may be running the meeting, but everybody has a say. Everybody's allowed in the conversation, and we try to keep that team building process moving as much as possible. I really haven't had many issues with that process that we run. I'm not there to slam my fist on the table and say, get this done now. We work through problems with the architect. We work through them with the owner and the general contractor. It's accountability. We use, in most cases, a simple, action log. Nobody wants to see their name in red. Hey, we've been waiting in this for 2 weeks. Joe, why haven't you, done anything about it? And, simple little things like that make people, want to get things done. So that's a part I really enjoy, is because we walk away, from these projects with, lifelong, friends and even general contractors follow our projects. They know what it's like working with us. And I'm not just grandstanding when I say that, but we work with repeat general contractors because they bid our projects lower because they know that they're going to be getting a fair shake. So we really enjoy that. And mitigation of issues. This all starts up front, contract administration. It's the Bible. What do the documents say? It's the first thing you go to as soon as there's a dispute. Let's check the plans, let's check the specs, and let's see what they say.
But
let's
if
check
you've
the
done a
contract.
great job of putting those plans and specs together, it should be spelled out right there.
Exactly. Schedule management, again, reviewing that. It is the contractor's, obviously, schedule. They have to manage their own schedule, but it's, making sure they're staying on that, reviewing that at the weekly job meetings, making them put forth a makeup schedule if you see them falling behind, not just, thinking that it'll happen. Making sure you make that part of your daily management. And change order reviews. We manage change orders very effectively, but what we do is we like to track them throughout the project in terms of what category they're in. Is it a design error? Is it an unforeseen condition? Is it something that the owner wanted to add? And we keep those, and we tally those up. And so when we sit down and review change orders, you can actually see, okay, the owner has attributed to X number of changes, designs at Y, and so on and so forth. Again, just keeping those accountability measures in place for each person on the team.
We have, you've seen them in our packages, but some examples, if you want to go back to, you know, North Plymouth Fire, we just opened up about a year ago. We were 11% under budget. Brewster Fire, we were 2% under budget. We had a couple blips on the radar screen there with site conditions. You know, as a geotech, you can put a hole here, you can put a hole here, but you don't really know. You can assume what's in between. So we had some issues there. Chatham Fire, 4% under budget. Dartmouth Police, 8% under budget. Dayton Police was 4% under budget. And these are just some examples of some of the projects. And our Chapter 149 history shows you that.
Public safety. This is the reason we're here. We made a concentrated effort about 12 years ago that our niche was going to be public safety. And we were going to go after police and fire stations, public safety facilities, dispatch centers, and make it a point to do so. It's much different than building a town hall or a library. And a lot of people don't realize that. You know, putting up the building is one thing, but when you're dealing with public safety, it's the response time in and out of the building. How are they accessing the vehicles? It's the IT that is, in my thoughts, the biggest part of building public safety building or fire station. You know, integrating with the fire station, say the alerting system, integrating that with the radios, with the town IT system, with however your dispatch is going out. So, you know, having the knowledge behind that is great, you know, for the architect to have, but we feel we also bring, you know, great knowledge to the table in terms of that. You know, we look at all this, you know, in terms of safety, security, response time, you know, equipment. We put together equipment lists for the owner. We know what vendors to go to, who to get pricing from, things like that, that we feel we have a competitive advantage in the market for public safety buildings. Absolutely. We have been working on public safety buildings for the past 12 years, every single day. We've been doing public safety buildings. There hasn't been a point we've stopped. And that's why we've been so successful.
And we'll talk about it later, but we don't go after every single project. We know our limitations, and we go after what fits in our model at that specific time. So, and as Taylor said, you know, public safety is our culture. But we have a very impressive list of public safety facilities. And you don't see a lot of other facilities, maybe a library here and there, or a lighthouse out in Aquina to move. But other than that, we're staying with public safety and we really enjoy it.
Yeah, and being selective is a good point too, Rick. You know, we don't look to go out and get 15 projects a year. Again, we're looking to stay right in our sweet spot. That may be 6 or 7 projects a year. And, you know, that keeps rolling, you know, a couple roll out, a couple roll in. We focus on quality, not quantity. We're not looking to do the most public safety buildings ever or the most buildings ever. We want to make sure we're turning out quality projects.
And we stay in our area. You know, I think this is what, 15 miles from our office. Taylor lives in Bridgewater, Virgil lives in Seacog. We don't go outside. We don't search for projects in Boston or north of Boston or west. We stay in the South Shore, South Coast. In this general area, we just finished up the Foxborough E911, which was a huge success. So this is kind of our sweet spot.
How are we doing on time? You okay?
I think it's, so I was going to mention, peeking through the last couple of slides, I think we're going to touch on some of the stuff you have in here and some of our questions.
Perfect.
So maybe if you want to hit the next slide or two, and then we can kind of.
Yeah, I'll go quickly through it. I know, you know, we love to present, so we can go for that sometimes.
Very comfortable.
Yeah, it is. You're a comfortable group. So, but what makes us different, I'll go through these as quickly as possible. But the first thing is you have the owners vested in your project. You know, Rick and I are the owners of the company, obviously, and we're going to be both working on this project. When Rick decides to walk into the setting sun, the company will be going into my name. So that's, the next step in this. We're not going anywhere. Basically want to say that. So
that's important to understand. Most of our competitors are products of mergers and acquisitions, and smaller companies being purchased into big companies. And I can go on forever. The lost value in that, because big companies are buying smaller companies to increase their overhead, to increase their volume, so they can pay the top of the overhead pyramid, and you end up seeing all of the people that helped make the company or make it a success are all going in different directions and leaving. You have a lot of turnover. We've been doing this a long time, and as Taylor said, the succession for Pomeroy Associates is not to be sold to XYZ company. The succession for Pomeroy Associates is we're building beneath building. We have a co-op program. We have we have one co-op individual from Wentworth that was with us all early spring. And now we've asked him to come back for Fridays. He's back in school, and we've assigned him to a project so he can see a project from ground up, from foundations all the way up. It's a great tool for him in his education. So we believe in growing from beneath and fostering that business.
Thank you. Yeah. That's why I'm presenting, because Rick can keep going. So we get along really well. Management overlap, we do this because, nobody can be everywhere all at once. So, we want to make sure that the three of us always know what's going on in your project. We do the same for every one of our projects. So if you call me and I don't pick up, you call Rick, he will, vice versa, one and the same. So we always have an idea and can, get you the answers you need. Nobody likes being left out in the cold when they're looking for an answer. So we talked about no large overhead. We are a smaller niche company, and we like that. No, we have no visions of being a large company. Quality over quantity, we talked about that. Perfect timing, again, this fits in perfect with our schedule. We talked about financial and budget management, team building, delivering on commitments to the client. Many things come up in a day. We do our best to write those down and make sure they're followed up on. They're not just, they go by the wayside. And when you walk into, a building, the client says, "Didn't we talk about that?" And if you have to put your head down and say, "Well, yeah, but I forgot about it," you're not doing your job. So we like to keep an owner's list of things.
I'd like to go back, if we could, to financial and budget management. Sorry.
Yeah,
but it's so important. And it starts day one for us. We require that every phase of the project, there are check estimates done, one by the architect, one by the OPM. We need to know where you're headed. Not only with the project that's being designed, but what's happening in the economy, what's going on with the lumber futures. We require that for every phase: schematic design, design development, and in the construction document phase. It gives us a better picture as to where your number is going to come in, so that we can help you get what you're looking for.
Yeah, we actually just had a project all ready to go to bid, and we had some pretty tough conversations with the estimators, and we made a decision along with the client, to put the bidding off 6 months because of how crazy it is right now. And, the bids that were coming in didn't make any sense, and we didn't want to put something out, get a bad number, and then we're constantly trying to get back to that number once it's out there. So
that's a great example, because the king has no clothes. And we were able to say that to the town manager and then to the select board, that it's our recommendation that we put this off 6 months. I'm not sure how many project managers would have done that, because that basically means that you've taken that project and you've tabled it for 6 months, which means cash flow. But our recommendation was, now is not the right time to be bidding this type of project. So we're going to put it off until December. That type of recommendation is where where we excel in that type of realistic conversations with our clients, with our architects, with our contractors.
Just to finish out here, contractor pre-qualification, we've been through that process many times. It's nothing new to us. If the budget would be over 10 million, we have to do it anyway, or you can do it, selectively as well. So Close out and switch over. This is always a major thing in public safety. When you turn off the lights at the old building, you want to make sure they all turn on at the new, especially in public safety. So that's something we start having actual closeout and switch over meetings, months before the opening to make sure that all goes smooth and according to plan. We're willing to take on any project. We do small projects, we do large projects. You might have seen in our proposal, we moved the Gay Head Lighthouse. We've done very big technical projects that, again, don't scare us. So we love them, actually, but the more technical, the better. Here's just some pictures, projects around the Commonwealth that we've completed. This is showing a lot of fire station experiences, some police station experience in here as well. And lastly, you might have questions on this, but we started taking a look at the site, and it's very interesting to us. We see a lot of great opportunities based on that parcel that you have next to the station now, that you already did some clearing, got rid of some ledge there, which is a great proactive approach. We started to toy around with it today, just with building blocks, but, started to think that, if you use that, left side as maybe new apparatus space, you can still use the admin, you can still dispatch out of the apparatus space that you have now, get your new apparatus space moving, and then maybe do some phased areas in the middle of, keep admin there, but also upgrade that building. I looked at the building when I went through the walkthrough. I think, it looks like, obviously we haven't done any studies of it, but it looks like it has some really great bones there that, if you can get some reuse of that building, it's excellent. And it will definitely help you, obviously, in the temporary facilities aspect. The location is great, being, that close to the center of town there. It looks like that you guys want to stay there anyway. So, we think it's a great opportunity, for the town to maybe get some reuse of that building and also construct something new.
So we've got to get this approved. We have to get the financing approved. And there's already a sour taste, I believe, because of the budget for the combined budget for the police station and where the fire station sits right now. So if there is an option for an adaptive reuse of this project without a complete tear down, then I think we should be exploring it. Maybe it doesn't make sense eventually. Maybe it does. But we need to explore it. We need to take a look at it so that we can send the right message to the taxpayers that we've looked at every opportunity here. Great street presence, as Taylor had mentioned. We've done a lot of phasing and hopscotching of projects, and we think that this has some opportunities here. What you see up on the screen there is Norwell Police. We developed that, as you can see. There's two facilities there. There's the fire station in red and the police station in blue.
Yeah, this was existing. We built this portion here.
And we shoehorned that police station in there. Everyone said it couldn't be done. We got it in, all the while allowing the fire station to headquarters to operate fully without any interruptions. And it's been a great success, a great success for the town. People said it couldn't be done. It was done, and we were able to complete it. We're very, very pleased with that. I'm not saying that it's the same layout that you'll be looking at here, but we have an obligation to the taxpayers to make sure that everything is explored so that whatever is presented in the right way. So we just wanted to let you know that we recognize what you're dealing with. We recognize how things ended up over the last couple of years. And, ideally the most important thing for this project, we tell a lot of our clients, is that the department needs relief from the conditions that they're within right now. So we need to find a way to get that relief, and pushing it in a direction that's not favorable for the majority of the taxpayers to get a no vote doesn't make any sense. So we need to figure out how to work with all of the groups and find out what's going to work best from a budget and from I hate that we use the word sell perspective, to get to the next phase. Because the bottom line is the goal is for the fire department. But we have a lot of egos and a lot of agendas that we have to get over. I don't mean within the group here, but I mean, from the taxpayer perspective, we're in front of taxpayers every single year. And, there's always a naysayer out there. So our approach is always to make sure that we throw all the spaghetti against the wall, explore all of the opportunities, and come up with a sound recommendation that works for everybody.
I appreciate you being considerate with the time, Kevin. I just wanted to end with one thing, but we always start our little charrette session when we start prepping for these. Why do we think we'd be, the best fit for this project? And it's our proven, track record on public safety experience. We feel there are many differences between hiring a big business and a smaller project manager like we are. We're going to be there for you 24/7, whatever it takes, we'll get done. We know we have the staff to do it.
But let's face it, we go against the bigs every single day. We're still in business. We still do a lot of work. And we've proven that.
We're in the area and we're available now. And the continuity you get from managed overlap, with the three of us. So those were just the 4 big points that, we feel like, we're ready for this project. Thank you.
So I didn't want you to feel rushed, so hopefully we have plenty of questions to ask.
I don't want to take your time. I know it's a late night.
You're going to have plenty of time to talk some more here. So you started to kind of allude to this, Rick. So my first big question is, what is that critical information that we need to gather to determine if we're going to renovate this building, renovate and add on, or if it's going to be kind of a reconstruction?
Well, I hadn't seen any information as to whether or not an existing conditions assessment has been completed on the facility or not. But we need to see what the bones of the facility are, how it can accommodate a retrofit or a renovation / expansion, and to determine whether or not it's a good reuse or not. We're in that process right now in the town of Plymouth with 4 stations there. And, it's a very interesting process. You get the right firm on board. There's a lot of investigation needs to be done. We need to prepare a project program for the department, and not to patronize, but a project program is basically a full analysis of the department and equipment and what the needs of the department are now, what the growth of the community is, and what the projected needs will be, 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road. And take that program and do some test fits within the existing facility. How can we take that police admin side and retrofit that into certain areas? The apparatus bays are pretty much, a little tight as it is. With the way that firematic programming is going these days, we like to see as much space as possible around all of the apparatus so that it's safe for the firefighters to get to their equipment. So we've already come to the conclusion that if we were going to do a retrofit there, you may do a couple apparatus bay on one side and keep the others. It allows some expansion, but ideally you really want all your apparatus together, for ease of access. So it may be that the new apparatus bay is on the other side of the admin, and then that is either reused, the apparatus bay is reused or torn down. But I think that we have enough there to allow us to work within the confines of what we have without having to worry about a temporary facility. We did a temporary facility for the town of Orleans because they wanted to stay in their location for a police department. Back to then, it was 4.5 years ago now, that temporary facility, which was just a rental primarily, it cost them $1 million. So if we can stay away from a temporary facility and work with them, we are, and work with the site that we have, it'll help us a lot. I hope that. Sometimes I dance around all over.
No, I think that's good.
You mentioned the existing conditions survey company analysis together. What kind of companies do you use to accomplish those
those tasks?
Traditionally, we'll rely on the project architect to conduct that with their forces and structural engineer. And if we have to be looking at expansion, we'll do some geotech in the areas that we would expand. But it's pretty slick these days with all of the 3D imagery. The architects can go through a building pretty darn quick and to do their first initial analysis, and the imagery even comes out dimensioned. So it helps you extend an awful lot to do that. But it would be with the firm, whomever is hired for the architect who hired would be doing the project programming. And if you haven't seen a project program, it's pretty slick. They'll go through and look at, and we sit with the departments and the architect, but they'll analyze the department. They'll try to understand what their needs are, not what their desires are, but what their needs are. That's important. I don't want anybody to take offense to that, but so many communities will say, oh, there's been a wish list that's been created. No, we've looked at the department, what their equipment needs are, and what their operational functions are, and developed a program that meets that in modern day, firematic programming. And sitting down and going through that, we'll end up with little block diagrams of each space in the building, whether it be a janitor's closet or the mechanic's shop or what have you. And then we'll put them all together and come up with an ideal square footage for the building. But it's all done by that one firm or consultants, including that firm.
Yeah, and for that project program too, it'll be done one and the same with a study of the building, but that program could drive you one way or the other to, we need to look at new, or yeah, we can use this building, or we can't use any of this based on what the fire department intends to do or how they intend to work operationally. So they work, hand in hand.
Based on what you've seen so far, what do you anticipate the biggest constraint or obstacle to be for this project?
That's a tough question because I think this is close.
I wish I knew more about the project. From the little bit of research that we were able to do, I shouldn't say a little bit, but a little bit that we found. I think obviously the number one, the biggest thing it would be budget and trying to make sure it's appetizing for the community and finding ways to get a building that's functional and doesn't shock the community when you come up with the price. And also we have a budget that works and, we don't get into the building and find out, we don't have enough money here. So I think budgeting is, first and foremost, one of the biggest steps we need to take in this. And then I'd look at the site and you're not a large town, but that program will tell you how big that building needs to be. And so how we start to site that building on the site that you have, making sure that works operationally, coming out onto the street. I know they've been doing it for years, but a bigger building, sight lines, you start to look at everything. So for me anyway, I think it's budget and then site orientation and setup.
It's funny, I wasn't going in that direction, but I'm going to agree with you. I'm sorry, no, because the program, I keep on going back to the program, but the study is going to determine what is the appropriate size facility for the department. Whether the town accepts that or not, it's going to determine what that appropriate size is. And whether it's at the existing location or it's at an alternate location, it's going to happen in one way or another. But it's the budget, and I hate to say this, but it seems to me that there's a little bit of distrust in the community. And so this next project that needs to be presented has to be rock solid. And the budget has to be rock solid. It has to be bulletproof. You're in a police facility. I guess it is all about the solution in the budget.
Especially the climate that we're in right now too.
Yeah, a lot of unknowns budget-wise.
Thank you.
Thinking of a recent public safety project, other than the 6-month bid delay that you've already addressed, what is a lesson learned that you have and how is that applicable to this project?
The mechanical systems always seem to be a problem. With the new energy code, the new rules and regs as far as how things are controlled, we're trying to make the mechanical systems as simple as possible because a fire facility is a 24/7 facility. And so I think that we spend a lot of time going through the different systems and talking with the mechanical engineers and the client as to what is going to be the best system, and trying things out, going to facilities with one type of system or another, so that we can understand, what's considered to be comfortable for the firefighters and what's not. When we did Chatham, we had in the bunk areas, one thermostat controlled 2 suites. Before that, 10 years before that, it was one thermostat controlled the entire wing. Now our facilities are designed so that each bunk room or living quarter has its own independent HVAC cassette and thermostat. Because sleep deprivation with firefighters is a big issue, and making sure that there's a comfortable place that is the right temperature for that individual for sleeping or any type of meaningful rest is very important. So I would probably say the mechanical systems is one of the areas that we've learned a lot, and it's ever changing. Technology is changing every single day.
Yeah, I was going to answer that a little bit differently, and I'll be quick, but for me, it's, the hot and the cold zones and how much the firefighting operation has changed over the years. And coming back from a call, going through that decon process, not storing gear in, sunlight so it can break down. Just that, looking at details that may be very small, to the passerby, but are huge. The cancer-causing carcinogens that come back from a fire on a jacket. It's insane when you start looking at the research. And so that's what I always find myself looking at as when we're going through these, early on drawings is, how are we keeping this side separated from this side? We have to have separate HVAC systems on these two sides so they're not commingling. We have to keep, certain gear out of certain areas. We have to keep the SCBA, tanks in a certain location. There has to be fresh air in this room. So the list goes on. But for me, it's just how that's changed and evolved, over the past 5 years. It's been steadily, rapidly increasing how these spaces are being looked at.
This is why he's your senior PM. Good answer. Thank you.
You pointed the issues with the lingering concerns by the community about the cost of this particular building and the fact that we not have enough to finish this next one. But even with that, and we've had a public meeting to try to put that behind us. I think that went well late last year. There is strong support for the fire department. They do a great job, and the community seems to clearly appreciate them. My question is, what strategies would you recommend the building committee use to develop support for that next debt exclusion? What have you done that's made a project go from no to yes that we should think about?
Early information, public forums, workshops. When we were getting Brewster Fire approved, which was a silver award medalist, we had a lot of struggles in town to garner the support for the new fire headquarters. So I conducted charrette sessions, workshops with any community member that wanted to come in. Myself and the project architect, we sat down in a big meeting room and just threw out ideas.
Every weekend for
February and March of one season, just to get everybody's input in the early concept period. And then as we started to develop those concepts into massing, we had more forums to allow people to see what has been developed from our early charrette sessions. We still had a big opposition group So I conducted a Sunday coffee with the largest naysayers in the community that had the strongest voice. The chief didn't even attend with me. The town administrator did not attend with me. I said, look, I'm just going to go it alone. Just throw me in a room with these folks and let me just hear what their problems are. Let me try to get to a point where we can meet middle way. And I think that went quite well as well. So it's getting in people's faces and making sure that they know that we're listening. We may not agree, but if they know that we're listening, we've gotten halfway there. In the town of Chatham, we had one town member who had the largest voice, just happened to be probably the wealthiest person in town as well. Everybody listened to this one person. So Taylor and I sat down and had breakfast with him. And then it was my recommendation that he be involved with the building committee. Get him on the building committee.
I thought he was crazy.
Yeah, he was like, how do you want your mind? I said, I can, we're human beings. So the town manager, although she begrudgingly agreed to ask this member to be on the building committee. At town meeting, he stood up in the back of the stands and applauded the project because he was listened to. So it's finding who those naysayers are and trying to figure out a way to make sure that they've been heard. And that, we may not agree, as I said, and their solution may not be the solution that's presented, but at least if we listen to them and express kind of where we're coming from, I think we've done our job.
The good news is they're all on the committee already.
And to add to that, I don't think a lot of citizens understand really what we all go through and the questions that come up on each project. So I think when you kind of understand what is being discussed and what's being worked on, people kind of start to, kind of make a different judgment. So.
My turn. It is your turn.
What, so let's say we've got a team member that we're working with and it's just not working out with that team member or that consultant firm. What do we do as a group to address that situation?
Well, I'm assuming that they're under contract, and it could either be the owner's project manager, the contractor, or the architect. Those are the three major team members that you'd be worried about, I imagine. We've had it happen. Yeah, we've had it happen. We've had a situation where we weren't getting the services that the town deserved from the project architect. So we asked for a meeting with the person who was responsible for the project. We expressed our concerns. Nothing improved. So we asked for a meeting with the senior partners of the firm and expressed our concerns. And things marginally improved, but not to the extent that we were satisfied. And it's not just us. If it's an architect or an owner's project manager, if they fall down or they're not servicing the project well, the contractor is like a fish smelling blood or shark smelling blood. As soon as he sees that we're divided or undivided, I should say, they just use that to their advantage. And we could see that starting to happen. So as a last resort, we withheld payment for 7 months. We're in the middle of a construction project, and my recommendation to the town manager was, but I'm not signing off on their invoices until we see some corrections here, until we see some people replaced. We just cannot approve their invoices. And they finally recognized it. They made some changes, and we got through the project, but it was difficult. But in the end, the project was done. Again, no litigation. And we were under budget. But it was just a lot of work for us.
So you're obviously one of 4 firms that we've finalized. We've narrowed our list down to. We feel fortunate. We think we've picked 4 really good firms to interview. So I guess even more important to us is that the team we select is really the team that we see here. So what do you think sets Pomeroy Associates or even the three of you apart from any of the other teams that we're going to interview during this process?
Well, for number one, you're dealing with the two owners of the company. So the buck stops here. I'm not going to be coerced by another company to go work for them. Neither is Taylor.
My wife would kill me.
Yeah. So you avoid any powerful. You avoid any turnover or lack of continuity with the senior people, which I think is huge. We know the larger companies. We know how they're structured. I spent many years in the private sector, big company buying businesses. I know exactly how it works. You buy businesses to increase your revenue, make your bottom line look good, but you're feeding the top. And what the bottom or the companies that are purchased eventually start to falter. It just looks good at the time. As far as continuity goes, I think I've gone off track a little bit, Taylor, but from a continuity perspective, you're getting Taylor and myself. We're not going to go and move on to another project, and you'd be in great hands with Virgil, but that's not the way we operate. And I think anybody can say that, but if you've checked our references, you've heard the same thing. We stay with the project from the beginning to the end. Quite frankly, I retired 20 years ago, and I started Pomeroy Associates. And the primary reason was to provide good service and something that we're proud of. So we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, in terms of what sets us apart, and not to sound cheesy, or I'm not talking bad about other companies. This is what I feel we really bring, but we care. That's why we only take on so many projects. We care about, the projects we're working on. We're there, morning, noon, night, anytime you need us, we're there for a phone call. We're there if there's an emergency. The amount of time, I can't even count the amount of times we've had to drop something at home and run to a project because there's a certain emergency or, something's going on that we don't feel comfortable, being handled without us there. So that's what you're getting.
And if I can add a few things. So how I got to know Rick was I was on the GC side and he was the owner's project manager, and obviously, the presentation that they speak about is actually what they're really about. And, for me, I wouldn't have come to a company that I wasn't comfortable with. The fact of being a family environment is absolutely true. I think the three of us work together hand in hand on a daily basis. We each take different aspects and roles. We each have a level of expertise. I, much like Rick, started out as a design in the design field, have worked in the general contracting, have worked for developers, and have worked for owners like Bank of America and Citizen Bank. So we kind of understand your position. We've been in that position, and I think we kind of roll that all into our daily routines, and that's how we manage a project. Really, we're thinking about winter conditions right now for a project that we're just starting to come out of the ground. And, we're thinking a couple of months ahead of opening dates and move schedules and, agendas and task lists to get that ball rolling. Much of what they've said, I kind of offer that back support where we're at meetings and I'm kind of working on, the pre-con meetings and the, RFPs and stuff so that they can be the face and name to the owner. So it really is a collective, cohesive team that we all work together. We meet regularly. We sit in, same office. And, I wouldn't have come over if I wasn't, comfortable with, with what they were about. So,
yeah,
a good test would be, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but what the heck, a good test. You've already interviewed one candidate. You have two more tomorrow. When they show you projects, ask them who was the project manager for this project or that project or this project, or what company was it completed under? Because most of these larger companies bought other companies so that they could have a public safety portfolio. And it might be interesting to see where that project manager is that did XYZ, 6 years ago. Because I can pretty much guarantee you they move around a lot. You can point to any one of our projects and you can ask us who was the project manager. And it was either Taylor or myself for the last 20 years. So, I think that bodes, that says a lot about what we bring to the table.
Thank you.
Interested in your opinion, kind of shooting from the hip, a project of our size, do we need a clerk of the work? And if we do, is it full-time or part-time?
Full-time, absolutely. It's a cost, there's no doubt about it, but especially a facility like this, with the technology, with the intricacies, keeping an eye on what's going on with the project, we strongly recommend that a full-time representative be on the job site. We have completed projects that have been part-time, and we have completed projects where there's no clerk.
Yeah.
And it's really the decision of the client.
Sure.
But it's our recommendation that especially in Chapter 149, municipal construction, that there be someone that is holding everybody accountable on a daily basis.
Yeah, and one way or the other for your project, we would recommend it be the clerk be somebody that's done a public safety building. Hopefully a fire station, because there's critical components that you only know if you've done it once. So
we're doing a slate roof replacement in the town of Chatham right now for the Eldridge Public Library. It's a slate roof. I mean, there's a lot of intricacies. It's it's complex. It's a great architect, great contractor. And the town came to us and said, we want someone from your company here every single day. This is the only way that we can be comfortable that the library, because the patrons will remain safe, the public will remain safe, that the contractor is abiding by their requirements. Especially if it's going to be an adaptive reuse of the existing facility where you have operations and you have emergency calls 24/7. You want to make sure that you're keeping that contractor within their area of work.
Yeah, and our clerks are not just documenting clerks, they're, like Rick said, project managers. So they get involved initially in with utilities and contact utility companies. Obviously they monitor the certified payrolls. They manage the third-party vendors such as material testing and geotech, so that when we're calling them out legitimately for something and not costing the town those extra, 1 hour visits or minimum 4 hour visits and stuff. We had a situation last week where very simple, structural engineer would actually know, but, they were trying to pour an elevator pit. They were going to try to get a 4,000 pound accelerated mix for a footing so that they could put foundation on top of it. And our clerk's like, no can do. He kind of caught it initially as they were just trying to expedite their schedule to move forward, but it wouldn't have impacted them if they waited a day to do the footings one day and the pour the next. I don't think if you had a clerk, a half a day, that would have, been caught. That would have just, so to Rick's point, oversight is key from morning to night.
Thank you.
Norfolk's a green community. We're talking about a 50-year building, plus or minus. We haven't talked much tonight about sustainability. The state energy codes are strict here in Massachusetts. There's the stretch code. What approaches have you all brought to projects, not necessarily just to check boxes in terms of sustainability, but to plan for what the future is for sustainable buildings?
I'm going to let Taylor talk a little bit more about that, but we have 3 projects that are LEED certified buildings. And those were library projects where the state was contributing to the cost of the increased construction costs and engineering to be LEED certified. We find that most municipalities for police and fire don't want to pay the extra cost above and beyond what we're already getting from the energy code, which you mentioned is very strict, and we're almost at lead as it is. What we have found to be very popular is, if not incorporated into the facility, the accommodations made for solar arrays on the roof structure. We've looked at geothermal in many cases. We generally will add geothermal into our life cycle cost analysis when making decisions on mechanical systems. The Center for Active Living in Sandwich, we had an ad alternate for the solar array on the roofs because the budget came in so favorable. They accepted that alternate, so we're moving forward with that.
Prepping for electric vehicles, making sure there's provisions in place for them. It's funny you say checking a box. I'm a lead AP myself, and I'm on the fence about lead in terms of how they make you get some points, because some of it's spending money to save money. A lot of those points that they make you, kind of go after. In theory, most of it is great. But I think what you said with the stretch energy code and the Massachusetts energy code, you pretty much have a lead building by the time you're done going through the energy code in most cases. But in terms of what we like to see, kind of beyond that, and Rick, touched on that, it's making sure the provisions are there in place. You're not sure what all the technologies are going to be when they come out, but if you have, areas where you want electrical, charging stations, let's get the conduit in place. Eversource has a make-ready program that, after the project's done, they can come in and put the pedestals in for you, things like that. So all of our roofs being PV ready, things like that. And when we go through the design, we ask the questions. We're certainly not, experts in everything green, but we ask the questions of the consultants. To look at things differently, like Rick said, geothermal, or is there a different way we can get better R value in this wall if we do this? Things that we've seen in the past. So taking what we've done and then looking towards the future with, let's just say, provisions, not necessarily having to spend all the money on everything, but making sure that the town wants to do it when we're gone 5 years, down the road, they can do it. So being ready for it.
Elaborate more on your life cycle cost analysis. I know you mentioned it, but do you focus solely on mechanical systems, or do you look at the whole building, the facade, the insulation, building materials, kind of operations, maintenance, and like the life cycle of the full equipment?
It's primarily the mechanical equipment. The exterior facade and envelope is also reviewed, but when we're looking at that, it's the expected life expectancy for the roof and the facade material in the windows. The big ticket item is, because once those are installed, whatever your investment was, it shouldn't make too much of a difference what your operating costs are. It shouldn't affect your operating costs because everything has to meet the energy code. It's the mechanical systems that are the big ticket items, because we see a lot of communities that want to go as inexpensive as possible with their mechanical systems. And what we like to show them is that what you can expect to maintain that piece of equipment, it's usually 4 or 5 different systems that'll be in this analysis. It'll start with your base system, and what systems would be above the line from the base system, and it will also have systems that are below the line. And it'll identify what your upfront costs would be, what your annual maintenance would be, what your annual operating costs would be, energy usage, and what your expectation is for the life of the equipment. And it all comes out to a number at the end as to over 30 years or 25 years, what you expect for that mechanical equipment. So it helps you make that decision. Sometimes, spending a lot of money up front is the right answer for some communities, and in other communities, it's sort of middle of the road.
else? Okay. I really appreciate.
We have a question for you. How quickly are you making your decision?
We have interviews again on Wednesday night.
Yes.
And so we need to then go through the process outline in the RFQ. So not sure if it'll be this week or following week. Working on that.
We wish you luck with that. I know it's not easy.
It's a good problem to have.
It is.
By the way, I met your chief a couple of weeks ago at a fundraiser. Very great guy, great guy. We hadn't had the opportunity to meet before, so we spent a good amount of time with that. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where in Seacon you were?
Actually, it was Somerset.
Oh, Somerset. Okay. Never mind.
Done a lot of work. So.
Okay.
Do you live in Seacon?
I don't. I grew up in Seacon. My parents still live there. So graduated up to high school.
Okay, yeah. We just got selected for their fire station.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we're in the process of going through, still the contract process. Haven't really started any work there yet, but that just happened.
Renovated the Sam's Club there.
I'm sorry?
Renovated the Sam's Club.
All right.
Full facade. Relocated the electrical room 10 feet while built. So that was a challenge.
What is it now? Is it Home Depot?
It's an at-home.
At home. How old are you? Sorry about that. I said you're old, Mike? Yes.
You thought you moved? Quick question. Camera's on.
Thank you. I went to college because of Seacon. Crazy as a little.
It's in here.
Walter Horton.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much.
How old are you?
Good night.
Oh, okay.
42.
I was going to say, I thought Walter was maybe a year or two younger than I was.
I failed kindergarten, so I stayed back. So yeah, I guess in my class.
Yeah, small world. So, do I have to adjourn the meeting?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So,
Motion to adjourn.
I did just want to talk, so I know, we got 2 more interviews on Wednesday night. I don't know if we want to try and book something. I would imagine it could be a quick meeting the week after to make our decision, or if you guys want to stick around Wednesday night after we interview 2 more firms to kind of go through the rating and come up, decide on who we have. My thought was we could possibly interview the 2 firms on Wednesday and then have a relatively quick meeting early the following week to talk about references, and then we could possibly have all the table formalized for that meeting and then hopefully make a decision. Seems like a lot to cram into the next meeting. So, yeah.
I would say it seems like a lot, but in the selection boards that I've been involved with, I'd say 95% of them make the decision after the last interview.
Yeah. Okay. I'm perfectly fine doing that. I think we probably have to have the table filled out at the conclusion of that meeting.
Right, so I have it on my computer. If you guys can work on your ratings for the first 2.
Yeah.
And then we can be prepared to kind of be thinking about that as you listen to these next interviews. I can quickly add them in and see where we're at. And then
So we don't all have to formally fill ours out and send it in, or we could do that the next day as like a.
If you individually want to send Judith your form for these 2, we can pre-fill those.
You can print out forms for the next one. You can see and fill it. You can calculate it.
Yeah, and I'll bring hand ones and you can do them as you go. And then the only other thing is where we stand on the reference checks and any points that will go up or down for anyone for those.
Yeah, so I can speak for myself. I know I had Colliers assigned to me. I've already reached out and talked to some people at Colliers, so I can talk about that after the next meeting. I don't know where everybody else stands.
I've got a couple from Pomeroy, but as you saw, there were an extensive number of. I probably won't get to obviously talking to every single one of them.
Yeah, you don't have to talk to every single one. I think, just as long as you feel like you're getting a sense of their references, I think, I think like you said at the last meeting, I don't think you're going to find one that's going to say something really bad about them.
Yeah,
But
so
at
at
least
least based
kind of-
off the Google one too.
Right. So.
Did we get a new rating sheet?
Yep,
Yeah.
Judith emailed it out the other day with
Is it
the
in the
packet.
packet?
It's an Excel spreadsheet, but I can send it again tomorrow.
No, I must have just missed it.
It's shorter because it's only got 4 firms.
Right,
It's got the
and 4
categories. and the
categories.
RFQ.
And I mean, I don't know if there's really a benefit to sending these two to Judith beforehand. I think maybe if we just go through them all.
Sure,
that
whatever
might-
is easier. I mean, it
Yeah.
won't take 2 seconds to pop.
Yeah, but I think if everyone can at least give some thought to these two. You know,
Yep.
so that then we're only really rating the other two after that
Right.
interview. So.
Good question.
Sure.
How about Aaron? If you didn't get to witness these two, is he gonna be kicking out of the?
I was thinking about that as we were sitting here and I didn't land on an answer yet.
Maybe you can watch the YouTube video.
He could. He definitely
He
could.
will. He's definitely a tech guy. He's so interested. All these guys are really interested,
Yeah.
Paul, and I can guarantee he'll ask me some questions tomorrow.
So maybe, yeah,
Yeah, I think if he does, yeah, that would be reasonable.
yeah, I think so.
Good question.
Everybody's May, I won't be here on Wednesday. My son's graduating 8th grade, so not that I have a
Oh,
voice.
come
in this.
on. I mean,
I know.
where's your priorities, man?
If anybody has a 6th grader, want to Mansfield tomorrow.
I know that.
And I may be not late on Wednesday, but not here right at 6. Might be like 6:50.
Well,
We can start at 6:30. I just wanted to go over the
I
questions.
posted the
at 6, so-
meeting for 6. We can't start earlier than that, but we can start later.
Yeah, so
Okay.
if you want to say 1:15, or we'll
Yeah,
try and start right at
I'll-
6:30.
6:26 and not a minute later.
Yeah,
In the interest that we're going to be making a decision afterwards, we'll try and start
Get
pretty much right on time.
Yeah, I'll get
So-
here as fast as I can.
Of course.
Family stuff.
Okay. Good. Then I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor say aye. All right, I think we're adjourned.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
So nice to be in person finally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Weird.